Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another Fundamentalist Fails. It is Friday, my favorite day. Your experience of the day may differ. It may be Thursday for you, but it's Friday for me, so I love today. Today is the time where we debunk, and today I've got a really interesting one, actually. I've been doing a few chats on channels about evolution, so I wanted to do something surrounding evolution, and this one is a weird one because it's not young Earth creationists. It's actually, I believe, old Earth creationists kind of thing. But it comes from the Colby Center for the Study of Creation, which is just hilarious because, it's begging the question straight off the bat, right? Like, you've got the study of creation. Okay, do you want to prove it's a creation first? No, you're just going to assume that. Okay, all right, well, let's see where it's at then. That's the whole point. That the whole point is you're basically saying, okay, well, it is a creation. How do we work backwards to that conclusion? And I will be showing you a lot of this. But the weird thing is that this is brought to you by the Colby Foundation, but they seem to be a they seem to be tied to the Catholic Church, which accepts evolution, which is very, very strange. It's very, very odd. It's got ties to the traditionalist Catholic movement, but they they don't believe the same. Yeah, so um, doesn't appear to cooperate at all with mainstream creationist groups, which are basically all Protestant, Calvinistic, and evangelical. So it's very, very strange that they're sort of Catholic, but with um, they disagree with sort of mainstream Catholicism. I just want to point that out. Yeah, Jedi. I know that that's come up. I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers. But I have not seen that yet. I really want to see it though when I get a chance. Um, so yeah, the Colby Center is a Catholic organization based in Mount Jackson, Virginia, and the Colby Center was founded on yada yada yada. So it's very, very strange to me that you've got Catholics who believe that the Pope and papacy is the representative of God on earth, and they're basically saying, but he's wrong about this. It's very, very weird. So I don't know what's happening here. Um, so the Catholic Church and evolution, I believe they've just accepted it by now. It's very, very strange. So, um, yes, in it's been refined. The papacy offered nothing, and then they contributed like to the Darwin's theory. Um, I'll just see where their current stance on evolution is. On 2014, Pope Francis said evolution in nature is not inconsistent with the notion of creation, warning against thinking, uh, warning against thinking of God's act of creation as God being a magician with a magic wand able to do anything. So they sort of think that evolution is true, and it's just the means in which God did it. Well, no, Amber, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that was a member only stream, so that's sort of what prompted me to choose this one because I was talking evolution yesterday. Um, yeah, so yeah, Catholic schools in all countries teach evolution as part of their science curriculum. So this is very, very strange. So the Colby Center for the Study of Creation is a Catholic lay apostolate. I'm not sure what that means. What is a lay apostolate? Promoting creationism. So they're basically going against what the Catholic Church and the Pope's statement on evolution is, which is wild to me. Um, Okay, the later apostate can be individual. Okay, so they're not part of the Catholic Church, haven't been endorsed by the Catholic Church, but they're Catholic. They just disagree with the Pope. Okay. Yeah. So that's very, very, very strange, like that you're saying, hey, this is God's messenger on earth, but he's wrong. Okay. I don't know what to say about that. But we have a Dr. Kevin Mark here, and he's going to be talking about, well, you've heard it before. He's basically doing the evangelical, tap dance, basically the talking points. I will address them one after another. He calls them death blows to evolution theory, which, if they were true, they probably would be, but none of them are actually true. So, there's a problem there. And I will be sort of presenting what the actual science says about what they're saying. So first off, and I'll get this up on the screen. But thank you for joining me. I do love a Friday. It's always awesome. It's always awesome. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna throw chat on this. Yeah, can I do that? Yeah, all right. I'll just get that a bit thing. Yeah, that looks good. All right, I like it. I'm satisfied. Mm. Yeah, the Catholic Church finally accepted Galileo. Yeah. It only took them 359 years. Come on, they're on the ball. They're on the ball. Come on now. Let's see. Design, and that's better. All right. So this is Dr. Kevin J. Mark, DMD. What does DMD stand for? Does anybody know? And it doesn't mean the Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what he is. That's exactly what he is. I did bookmark the Colby Center. They have got, so if you look at the Colby Center, the speakers, and you go about the Colby Center, this is the Colby Center for the Study of Creation. We have Mr. Hugh Owen straight off the bat. We're all familiar with him. He's a weirdo. Doctor of Medical Dentistry. Yes. He's a dentist. Their expert on evolution is a dentist. Yes. Correct. As Mr. Hugh Owen. Yeah. I mean, what a guy. Oh, hello, hooligan. I do apologize, mate. We had some problem with seeing you in chat. We can see you now. I'm just confirming we can see you. We love you. I missed you yesterday. Where, what happened? I haven't opened up my Discord today. We had some tech problems with Yahooligan because YouTube went, screw Justin in particular, you're not going to have things. You can't have nice things. You can't have nice things. But you're showing up today. Yeah. So you've got such prestigious things, Mr. Eric, Dr. Strata, electronics or aeronautics engineer. An aeronautic engineer. Because when I do biology, I want an aeronautic engineer. Now, look, in their field, they're probably amazing, right? They're probably absolutely, yeah. Oh, Sapphire, you are glorious. Yeah, a dinky male dongle. Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely what it is. I'm sold. A physicist. Yeah, that one's coming up too. It's all coming up, Justin. So, all right. Well, I want to test this, so I might do a member stream just to test your ability to chat, because that sucks, my guy. That sucks. It's some Edward A. Raz. I'm so glad that man is not Edward A. Riz. He's a nuclear engineer and physicist. Yeah, that's their speakers. That's apparently Saint Colby, who he's named after, but he's not a speaker. Well, not anymore, anyway. look, I'm sure they are fantastic. That's not really a thing. That's not really a no, 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 no. You've got to be joking. Um. Ooh, I don't know. There's an Australian Christian medical and dental fellowship. I don't see dentists for Christ. Are you lying to me? Are you pulling my leg? Look, it's impossible to tell these days, Jedi. Like, I mean, sometimes you'd go, no, that's ridiculous, and it actually exists. Like, seriously, seriously exists. So okay, all right. You're kidding. Look, it's impossible to tell, right? That's Poe's law. It's impossible to tell if somebody is joking because, didn't they found this and then you go and there's actually, like, yeah. So that's the speakers. They have a number of advisors, right? They've got all of these advisors like reverends and a PhD. He's a PhD in pure mathematics. Yeah, whoops. Yeah, okay. Can we find some kind of biologist in here? Software engineer, business management. Of course, of course. When I have advisors on evolution, I would want a business management. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A senior, yeah, aeronautical engineer. Of course, of course. That's a physician. They're a medical doctor. Okay, they're not a biologist, but they're a medical doctor. Let's just take them at random. Director of Family Life International. Well, it's getting close. Oh, there's another MD. Oh, they're a pediatrician. Okay, well, I mean that's close. That's closer than an engineer is. Rip. Yeah, that's terrible. Major. Oh, he's a master's in physics and a major in the US Army. Okay, well, I mean, oh, and his expertise is electro-optics. Well, applied mathematics. Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to find somebody in. Anyway, Kevin Mark, here we go. He is a dentist and president of Southwest Manitoba Pro-Life. Great, great. His expertise is dentistry, pro-life topics for some reason, and evolution and creation for some. I don't think that's really his expertise, right? I wouldn't say my expertise is evolution, right? Like I like it. I am interested in it. I look things up, but I'm not an expert in it, and neither is this man, right? He is not an expert either. There is no way. I'm just as much as an expert as he is, which means to say that he's not. Biomedical ethics. Okay, maybe it's sort of tangential. Geology, I sure. Chemistry. That's kind of. Oh, his expertise is original sin. Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry. My face just exploded. I'm terribly sorry. That was so ridiculous. That was so ridiculous. I sneezed out the lunacy. I had to sneeze out that lunacy. That is how bad that was. I his expertise is on original sin, origin of man and agriculture, and chemistry and materials training. And his look, the last one I'll pay it. But I don't think his master's in chemistry and PhD in material science gives him an expertise in original sin. I, I'm not 100% sure, but like this is ridiculous. Philosophers, like this is the experts they're getting about the origin of life in, and the best they can get for this talk is a fucking dentist. Look, I'm sure he is an amazing dentist. Okay, I'm sure he's fine on dentistry. I, you know what? I think If I was allergic to stupid, I would have died from doing this channel again, Sapphire. You got to take that back. If I was allergic to stupid, I would be in a coma right now, quite frankly, and on my way out. And maybe, either that or it's just a very mild allergy. Very, very mild allergy. Okay. So yeah, that's Dr. Kevin Mark, dentist, and maybe a fantastic dentist, but I don't think he's qualified to talk on matters of evolution. But he's going to try his best, and let's go.
Okay, so one thing you have to keep in mind as we're talking about this stuff is that we've really, really had to condense these presentations. I mean, you could study this stuff for years. So if what we're really just doing is kind of...
Yeah, you could study this stuff for years. In fact, there's people that are paid to study this stuff for years, and people that have studied this stuff for years. They're called evolutionary biologists. That's what they're called. Yes, like you studied dentistry for years and years and years. They did the same for evolutionary biology. Now, if they went up to you and said, no, you should actually chew on metal things, it's actually good for your teeth to strengthen them to chew on metal things, you would say, you are out of your mind. I am a dentist. And they say, well, there's this religious organization which has produced a number of papers that have debunked your dentistry. You would say, you're out of your mind. That's what's happening here, sir. That's what's happening here. Like, you as a dentist, if they came up to you and said, hey, I think it's good to use metal toothpicks, you would say, do not do that. And you would say, no, we've debunked dentistry. Dentistry isn't a thing. We've got the real dentistry. That is what is happening here. You are going to people that are actually experts in their field and saying, I'm a dentist, and these people are, we've got one or two religious people that disagree with the conclusions that you dentists have made. Completely disagree. Completely. That is what's happening here.
Whetting your appetite for this type of thing. If you really want to know more, you're going to have to do a lot of research yourself. The Gold Bay Center is a great resource.
Oh, do your own research. Do your own research. It's the flat Earth mantra since the beginning of time.
Resource for that, so I highly encourage you to go to that. But also, before you go, feel free to pick up some of these resources. There's a book there, suggested donation $10. If you promise you'll read it, you can have it for free. And there's some other pamphlets there, so please take those.
That's the thing. A book doesn't mean, like, there is a way to get credibility in science, and it's not writing a book. I think Dr. J. Bundy pointed this out to Bahy really well. He had a debate with Bahy. What's Bahy's first name? Michael Bahy? Michael Bahy. And basically pointed out that these people that are engaged in academia, and don't get me wrong, a doctor of dentistry is part of academia, right? Like, academia is all fields. It's not just, hey, we've got the, evolution, so you can't be part of academia. No, he absolutely is, right? He absolutely is. Just his field is not evolution. That's okay. He's still part of academia. It's just he's part of the field of academia, which is dentistry. Which is important. Our teeth is important, right? Like, this is important stuff. But he knows as an academic, Jebediah Bahy. I don't know why that tickles me so much. That really makes me giggle. I don't know why. Thank you. So, like, he knows as an academic the way to overthrow any accepted scientific theory, any accepted knowledge within science or academia in general, is to publish a paper, have it peer reviewed by other experts in the field, and prove it like that. And Dr. J. Bundy did a fantastic job pinning Bahy down as, that writing books and convincing people out in the public who lack the knowledge to appraise what you're saying is not the way to challenge science, and they know that. They just refuse to do it because they know that they don't have the evidence to demonstrate it scientifically. So what they do instead is basically they try to convince their flock, their religious believers, try to put this out there, get ground level support. And don't get me wrong, it's fine that you're doing that for political stuff, but that doesn't change scientists' minds. It doesn't, because then you have people like Dr. Kevin Mark here going out and saying ridiculous stuff. Oh, was it? Well, that makes sense. Wasn't that the one that was a peccary tooth, Bionic Latino? That was the one that was a peccary tooth. So, I would imagine that a dentist would be involved. I mean, if you're talking about teeth, that is dentistry. So, just saying. Hey, man, look, dentists are really, really useful. They're really important. I really like my dentist, Dr. Aggie. Big shout out, your champ. She is fantastic. So yeah, I big shout out to dentists. I just don't think they're really in the position to claim to have expertise in evolution. Sorry. Hey, I don't claim expertise in evolution as well. I mean, I look at it, I study it, I'm interested in it, but I wouldn't claim expertise. I leave that to other people, people who have worked in the field for a long time, have dedicated their lives to knowledge of this one field, just like this man has for dentistry and probably should have stuck to dentistry. Just saying.
Okay, so the next presentation, genetic entropy and other genetic death blows to evolution theory.
Yeah, so genetic entropy is Stanford. So that's Dr. Stanford. We're all aware of him. He's an evangelical person, so it's kind of weird that they're sort of promoting young Earth creationism. Genetic entropy is not a thing. It's not a thing in science. It's not an established mechanism of biology. It's not. It is something that the creationists made up. Stanford made it up. He basically had a hypothesis. I would call it a hypothesis. Certainly not a theory. It's a hypothesis that accumulating detrimental mutations would lead to the breakdown of organisms' genetic code, and he called that genetic entropy. Nobody outside of Stanford's circle in sort of answers in Genesis and creation ministry uses that term. The only reason why they, like experts in the field, like real experts in the field, know what it is because it is so infamous for having nothing to support it. Like literally nothing. And yes, Stanford is a real tragic tale. A guy that is incredibly good at genetics, made some really good... He's got some fantastic papers in the field when he still wrote about, genetics in a coherent way. And then he sort of started on this sort of young Earth creationist Christian thing and just sacrificed all of his credibility because he was coming out expecting people to accept what he could not demonstrate. So it is a sort of a tragic tale in credibility and selling out to as a scientist, basically. Because, as I'll point out later, Stanford is one... I mean, I can't prove it. It's just my opinion. But I think Stanford's just actually lying. Quite frankly. That's just my opinion. I can't say that for sure. Certainly nothing that would be libelous. It's just my opinion. But I think he's outright lying. But it's a shame because he was really good and did some excellent work. Do you believe in evolution? Evolution's a fact, my friend. Evolution is fact. So it's when we say it's a fact and a theory, you may have heard this before. It's so evolution is the change in allele frequency over the time, or the change in heritable characteristics over time. That's basically all it is. It's just things change. The theory of evolution is the entire model. So the fact is that things change over time. The theory is the model that we use to explain it, basically. And nobody disbelieves in evolution because we all know that traits change over time. What they push back is the theory of evolution, which is the model we have at the moment. So but they don't understand the difference. That's the thing. They don't understand the difference between the mechanism and the theory explaining the mechanism. They don't understand any difference between them. So it's wild.
Do you believe in evolution? Well, it really depends how you define it. Listen to these three definitions.
Yes, that is true. On an individual level, yes. It's partly accumulated to give gene errors that cause tissue weakening and failure. Well, yeah, that's basically one of the mechanisms that cause us to get old and die, basically, to decay as our lives go on. But he's talking about in populations, which is a different story altogether. So, okay, so his definitions of evolution. Now, don't forget that dictionary definitions are not prescriptive. They're not like this is how it should be used, right? Sort of dictionary definitions are how people use it in speech, in English, every day to themselves. And it might have a number of definitions kind of thing. Number one, the process in which different kinds of living organisms thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of Earth. Well, that is the theory of evolution, right? Like, I mean, it's the process, but, that's more to do with the theory. Evolution is the change of heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. Yes, that's basically it, yes. Or biology, and that's the biological term, changing the gene pool of a population from generation to generation by such processes as mutation, natural selection, and genetic drift. And that's from dictionary.com. Now, that is the biological one. So what does it mean in science, or what does it mean in biology? Yeah, that's basically what we're talking about. And nobody says that doesn't happen, right? So even the most radical fundamental, actually I shouldn't say that, I don't know how radical they can get, but almost all fundamentalists, even the young earth creation, even the most fervent one I've met, says yes, mutations happen, there is natural selection, right? So if you have a stronger horse that can run faster, it will be the one to survive in nature. Genetic drift happens, so basically random events cause that generation to generation, different traits to show up. What they do is they just say, but there's a limit for some reason. I don't know why, but there is a limit to how much things can change. And they really base that limit on the Earth is not, billions of years old. Or organisms haven't been around for hundreds of millions or whatever. That's basically where they draw that limit. So a horse is always a horse. It never changes. It might become a zebra, which mutation, natural selection, genetic drift. That's fine, but it won't be a non-horse. I don't know why. They have not explained what stops that from changing. Yeah, and it was funny. I will try to this week. I'll try to release the argument I had with a creationist in my member stream. Yeah. You occasionally get that in the member streams. I see something I like, I drop in, I broadcast it to the members. The member stream is up in the air. Memberships are available. Just click on the button. And you too can see me argue with a woman that thinks that dogs have always been dogs. And I had to point out, dogs haven't always been dogs. It's called a wolf. It's called a wolf. Canine lupus. Yes, it's called a wolf. And then you have canine lupus familiaris, which is the dog sort of thing. But yeah, yeah. But yeah, basically they say there's a limit, and there's no reason I see for being a limit at all.
That you can pull off of this first one's from Google. The process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history.
Well, yeah, and that's what I pointed out to Hovind. There's physics that stop you from So that's basically the square cube law. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the one that sort of says that at a certain point, the body is too large to efficiently carry energy and things like that. There are limits. It's just that the physical limits kind of thing. It's not Canis lupus backyardius.
Of the Earth. It's also defined as a change in the hereditable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. And finally, a change in the gene pool of a population from generation to generation by...
So the only one he disagrees with in that is the top one, right? The one from Google, which isn't even... Like, he's trying to point it out, oh, it's a dictionary definition. No, that's from Google. Google is not a dictionary, sir. Wikipedia isn't a dictionary. It's more like a encyclopedia, than anything else. But it's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that definition.
Such processes as mutation, natural selection, and genetic drift. Well, those are the definitions of evolution. Then I'm an evolutionist, because all of...
If those are the definitions of evolution, then I'm an evolutionist. It's hilarious, isn't it? The dentist stumbles onto the truth. Yeah, you just disagree with the scientist's current model of evolution. You basically have arbitrarily, well, not arbitrarily, because there's definitely purpose behind it, but he has put in a limit because he wants to believe that the animals were created according to the Bible, right? So he doesn't disagree that evolution happens. He wants to say it happens to a certain point and no further because he has a Bible saying something that contradicts. Oh, don't even. Look, we're going to be talking about mitochondria a little later. Well, the mitochondrial DNA a little later. So you could have saved it for that. You blew your load, Bionic Latino. You blew your load early. What are you doing? Come on now.
Of this stuff happens. We're not arguing with any of that. Of course, when we're talking about evolution, we're talking about the upward natural process that increases information in the genetics of organisms, resulting in increased complexity and function over successive generations, ultimately causing one kind of creature to morph into another kind.
Okay, this definition is used nowhere in science. Okay, nowhere in science. Nowhere. Increased complexity is not necessarily what evolution does. Right? It's not what it does. Like, their whole premise is flawed. Like, it's got to be increasing. It's not. Yeah, I'm still young. I can recover. Nice. Yeah. Just have some orange juice. Yeah. Cheers. Thanks. So it's not necessarily increasing complexity, right? Like, so if there is no food or whatever, like if there's not a lot of food around, it may be that the sort of less complex creatures that need less energy may be the ones to survive. Like, it doesn't automatically say that. So instead of increased complexity, it would be increased fitness for the environment. Whatever that environment is, right? Like increased fitness. So this increased complexity thing shows a flawed understanding of evolution. And this definition is, I don't know where he got it from. Probably the evangelicals on young Earth creationism, shtick. And you're right, Kurt. You're absolutely right, mate. This information is not part of evolution. Yes, correct. It does, so increases information is flawed, and the reason why is because when you say information in the sort of context of genetics, they say, oh, there's no new information. Any new sequence of DNA is new information. right? You get a mutation, a point mutation, or just say a substitution, which changes the genetic code. That is new information, right? That is absolutely new information. But when you say increases information, you're sort of trying to imply, hey, you'll get more genomes, you'll get more, more volume of genetic data, and that's not necessarily the case either. It can be the less genetically dense, like plants. Some plants have a ridiculous amount of chromosomes and genetic information. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what evolution will lead to, right? Sometimes it's actually less information, but it is in a way that is advantageous to that animal. Like, for instance, with humans and chimpanzees, chromosome 2 fusion, which, I can go over all the reasons we know that chromosome 2 fusion happened. You might say, oh, well, that's less information because we've got less chromosomes. We've got less than the other, one less pair. But the thing is that it doesn't mean that that's not advantageous, right? So this whole idea of more information is not accurate where it comes to evolution. It may actually be less information, more fit for the environment. So this really highlights, and one kind of creature to morph into another kind. Where is he getting morph from? Like, seriously? I mean, usually morph sort of means to polymorph or to change form, and it's sort of when you sort of say a morph, you're really talking about, a caterpillar metamorphs into a butterfly, right? Like, that's really what you're talking about, and that is not what happens in evolution. This sort of is trying to suggest that it's like a Pokemon kind of thing, like it just transforms. No, that is not what we're talking about here. No, this is wrong. This is just downright wrong. My Morphin Power Rangers. Yeah, Jedi. Yeah, absolutely.
And you may have heard the term macroevolution, which is essentially synonymous for that.
Same process. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The creationists saying that, microevolution, macroevolution, we believe in micro but not macro, they're really basically saying, well, I can believe 1 year can pass, but I don't believe that a millennia can pass, right? That's basically what they're saying. There is no difference in process. Like, we haven't gone, oh, well, this process is microevolution and that's macro. No, all we've done is just put two labels on time frames and the amounts of change that occur over time. So we've said, hey, if it happens for a short bit and the organism is still able to interbreed, still genetically compatible, that's microevolution. When it becomes large enough that the animals can no longer interbreed, that's macroevolution. There's no actual line between them, right? There's no actual thing. It's just we've put a designation because we need to know what we're talking about. It's just a convenient thing to know what we could call it short-term evolution and long-term evolution. We could just say that. In fact, I wish they would have said that, because then these people could stop jumping on micro versus macro. Just saying, if you're a scientist and you want to give names to time frames, and creationists are going to have a problem with it because of their book, call it, instead of macro and micro, use short term and long term, or something else.
You can call it from goo to you by way of the zoo.
No, you couldn't. And the reason why is because this suggests that humans have evolved from the modern animals in the zoo, and that is not true, right? The organisms that everything evolved from now are no longer around. They're not in the zoo. They're not anywhere, right? They evolved and survived, or they didn't evolve in a way that suited the environment and they died. They're not in the zoo, they're gone, or they're us. Right? Like this is absolutely a straw man, because it's trying to suggest to the theist that, hey, you came from those animals that we keep in the zoo. No. No, you don't. You come from the ancestors of those animals, like way back. That they're not in the zoo. They're not anywhere. They died out.
You start out with some sort of protoplasm, and you end up with
protoplasm. I'm not sure that's the right word, sir. I mean, it was a protocell. I'm not sure about protoplasm. I think protoplasm is sort of the material in cells, isn't it? Isn't that the material in cells, the protoplasm between like the organelles and stuff? Like I think, like even for a dentist, his level of biology is a bit concerning. Because protoplasm, it was a protocell, not a protoplasm. Protoplasm is the stuff in between organelles in the cell, I think. Maybe my knowledge of biology is terrible. I must admit it. Biology through my life has not been my strong suit, but I try my best. I do try my best. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so protoplasm, the colorless material comprising the living part of a cell, including the cytoplasm, nucleus, and other organelles. Okay, all right. Well, maybe he's right, but I think it's maybe I'm thinking of cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. Okay.
Everything, including you and me. Now, a single tree of life really doesn't reflect the findings of science, and of course, it doesn't reflect Holy Scripture. And
it doesn't reflect Holy Scripture. All right, well, pack it up, people. It doesn't reflect Holy Scripture. It does reflect the findings of science, by the by. The orchard model is something that they came up with. There was a paper on why the orchard model does not work. And basically the chances of it forming in the way that they claim it has, and I couldn't find the paper. When I searched for orchard model and paper, I got a lot of stuff on trees, which is fair, but this orchard model, like there's no evolutionary biologist, there's no geneticists in mainstream that actually believe that. It's been pretty well torn down. They can't. Ectoplasm. Yeah. No, I was absolutely talking about ectoplasm. Absolutely. This is the thing. Does not reflect the findings of science. Well, it does reflect the findings of science. It just doesn't reflect the problem is that it doesn't follow Holy Scripture. So he's basically, it cannot be true because my book says something that disagrees with it. And this is from creation.com. Get used to that website. You're going to see a lot of it through this presentation. He is, seriously. He is doing Fundamentalist greatest hits all in here.
That tree on the left is, of course, the evolutionary tree, which can, instead of a tree of life, be really referred to as a tree of death, because it requires millions, actually billions of years of death and destruction.
Okay, so that, if you're unfamiliar, is an appeal to consequence. He's basically saying, hey, it's bad that this requires there to be death through billions of years, therefore it can't be true. It's like saying, hey, people, if people fall down from gravity, it can't be true because that's bad, right? Like the consequence and the problem that evolution doesn't really care about us has no effect on whether it's true or not, right? It doesn't. It's sort of saying, hey, I have to win the lotto if I don't, because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, right? Like the consequences have no impact on whether it is true or not. It has no impact on it. This is called wishful thinking. So basically, he's just engaged in, he's just engaged in basically going, well, I don't like that evolution has, sort of says, hey, lots of animals go extinct, they die. It's a mechanism in evolution. Yeah, we don't like it. Evolution doesn't care, right? Just like we don't like that, hey, if we fall over, we hurt ourselves. Gravity doesn't care. Like, that's the thing. Whether it's true or not has nothing to do with whether you like the consequences or not. And this is sort of, I've been noticing this sort of particular flaw in thinking a lot with creationists recently. Oh, I don't like that. If subjective morality is subjective, we have to, we're just agreeing on something. Yeah, that's not a reason why it's not true. That's just you don't like the entailments of it. Okay, you don't like it. I don't like it either. If aging is true, then I'm going to die someday. Yeah, I don't like it, but that doesn't mean that aging, I'm not going to age. Like, it's either true or not, regardless of what happens.
To ultimately result in what you see today. Now, in Orchard...
Oh, it's Baum's paper, Statistical Evidence for Common Ancestry Applied to Primates. Yep, Baum. Yes, the statistical one. Thank you so much, Kurt. You are a champ. I had that at one point, like bookmarked, but I don't. I think I changed system, and I don't have it anymore. So, the common ancestry. Wiley is good. Oh, I've just got the abstract. Read the full text in PDF. Oh, I need to access. Yeah, okay. It's definitely paywalled, which is annoying, but that's okay. So I'll just point out that this paper, it basically puts the statistical analysis on the orchard model and common ancestry, the tree model as they call it, which we just call common ancestry. The statistical evidence says that this orchard model is basically impossible. Like, it really is impossible. It just doesn't work. It's paywalled, but hey. But thank you, Kurt. Really appreciate it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right as well. Yes, it's also an appeal to emotion. Yeah. For hell needing to exist. Okay, wild. Okay, SP. That's a wild one. Hell has to exist, or else people won't be punished, and they just get to die. Oh, then what will you do? There's no real justice. Yeah.
Model, where we have a certain amount of limited diversification from many different originally created kinds, is much more consistent with both science and Holy Scripture. And so
it's not consistent with science. It 100% it isn't. That's the thing.
You see in this model a variety of created lines that have actually...
And that's a good point, Rosterman. When you do get conferences like with actual scientists who are experts in their field, it is their peers that are there, people who also have degrees in the field. Maybe they have undergraduate degrees. Maybe they have degrees in sort of things. It's not always the case. Like, sometimes that scientists definitely do get out there and do it with ordinary people. But yeah, in conferences, scientific conferences, it usually, it won't be just people off the street. It will be scientists. But they do public things as well, which I think is great. It's just we've got to be more discerning about who is an actual expert in the field and who is a dentist doing LARPing, like, really. And don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert, right? I am not an expert. I'm absolutely not an expert. I do like the thing, but the thing is that I say, hey, go to the experts, the people who are held up in the field and the scientific consensus among the entire field. Don't just cherry pick, one guy and say, yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, DeGrasse Tyson. I do like him. You know, I know he said some weird stuff at times, but I don't know. I like him. I think he's good. Sci-Hub, okay, I can do that. Well, I would like a copy of that because I know that it's really well done to sort of show that you know there's absolutely no reason besides Bible said a thing of thinking that the orchard, as they call it, is actually true. It's just, hey, the Bible says so, therefore, you know, there's scientific evidence for it. There's not. There's nothing. Oh, the DOI? Okay, sure. The By the way, if you're wondering, the DOI is a digital object identifier. It's how we track papers through the system in online, basically. So if if you want to cite something, like this is the thing. If you want to cite a paper and you're actually interested in people, like if you're arguing with someone, you want to cite a paper, and you 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 sorry, I've lost it. If you want to cite a paper and you want people to read it, all you need is a DOI. So it really annoys me that people that you argue with will cite something like, they'll just give the last name of some person in the paper and just say, hey, this paper thing disagrees with you. It's like, well, can you just give a name, a title, and a date? And they go, no, that should be enough for you. It's like they don't actually want you to read it. They don't actually want you to read it. All they want you to do is they just want to give out, this paper agrees with me. That's all they want to do. Where's the DOI for this one? SciPub. Open a URL above to access SciPub in search bar. Open a URL above to access the SciPub homepage. Okay, this one's in Russia. Okay, well, I mean, why not? Oh, there we go. Okay, beautiful. All right. So, statistical evidence of common ancestry. That is beautiful. Okay, well, I'm bookmarking that website. Direct from Russia. There you go. I have not familiarized myself with this paper in quite some time. I'll just go to the conclusions that they made, basically. But this is sort of what you get from scientific papers. They are dense, hard to understand. Totally, absolutely. They've got a discussion. Every test of species essay that we applied to the primates suggested this model does a very poor job, actually, compared to common ancestry. Yeah, separate ancestry and common ancestry. Many of these data sets reject species essay strongly. The probability of obtaining a test statistic more extreme than the one observed under the species separate ancestry model being incredibly small, often approaching or greatly exceeding the probability of picking the correct atom at random among the estimated 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the known universe. This is what they came up when they actually tried to do a statistical inference on what's the chances this happened. And, it's so statistically unlikely, it's basically impossible. Like that is what comes up. But that is an amazing website. I don't know why I didn't know of it before. For number one, I do want to download that. It's documents. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll sort that out later. And I do want to bookmark this one. Thank you. Jer, where have you been all my life? Yeah, no, I gotcha. Yeah, just did so. Yep, no worries. But thank you.
actually speciated somewhat and diversified somewhat. There's no doubt that this happens, but the speciation and the diversification that's happening is not resulting in increased complexity. It's not an upward process.
Doesn't need to. This whole thing that evolution like goes towards complexity necessarily, it tends to, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. Hello, Johan. Good to see you.
These things are either horizontal changes from the built-in highly advanced genetics that happened at creation, or there has been a downward process where mutations have happened and have harmed the genetics of these.
So he's basically talking about deleterious mutations. And yeah, there's a lot of deleterious mutations. It's not a problem. And I'll explain why when we get to it. But he's sort of saying, hey, we don't see an upwards trend in fitness. Absolutely we do. Every single practical study using, short cycle organisms like Drosophilus, the fruit flies, and bacteria and algae and things like that, they all show an upwards level of fitness. Like, they don't show this deterioration which you're claiming. So unless you're doing some kind of study somewhere on some organism that shows this, I don't know where he's getting this from, except that he's taken Stanford's genetic entropy and run with it.
Organisms. Now, believing in supernatural creation and rejecting evolution doesn't mean fixity of species, as I said.
Okay, so there is no such thing as kind in biology, right? There's no such thing as kind. They put kind at some arbitrary place, where, I don't know. It depends on what you're talking about. So we have the categorization system that you saw earlier, like species, genus, family, order. It's got a categorization. Now that's Linnaean taxonomy. It is trying to put labels on organisms which are all joined in a spectrum, if that makes sense, right? So you're basically going, oh, well, we're going to put the label there of this amount of change. And because everything is constantly changing, it's just a label. It's just a label. It's like having a distance to, you're going a mile down the road and you put the distance at a certain place to say, oh, that's 3/4 of the way. It's just more a guide. It isn't actually anything real. Like, it isn't actually a thing. It's just a label of a certain amount of change. And that's why it gets fuzzy, like what's actually a species and what's not. Because, the organisms, as they change, they won't be going, okay, well, now I'm a new species. It's just at that point we've said, okay, we're going to designate that as a species. And that's why it gets fuzzy and hard to interpret. Because as far as life's concerned, there is no such thing as species or phylum or whatever. There's just life, which is all interconnected, changing over time. There is no separation. We just assign it like that because we got to know what we're talking about. So it's a description. And this is a common thing among creationists. They mistake the label for the thing itself, right? They mistake the map for the place. And so this is called the reification fallacy. You're basically saying, or possibly a misplaced concrete. Like, you're saying, hey, this is a species, that's an actual thing. No, it's a label to describe something. Okay, you could say the same about sort of who is Native American, for instance, kind of thing. Like, yeah, there's definitely something, but that's just a label we've given to somebody who has come from a certain place. Like, it's not an act. Like, life doesn't go, oh, well, you're Native American. No, that's not what happens. Okay, that's not what happens.
Scripture speaks of created kinds, and the examples we have today of the various kinds of animals are variants that are probably not identical to the original example of the same created kind. Like, for instance, dogs. We see all these varieties of dogs, yet they're all still dogs and recognized as such. Yet, of course, dogs can breed with wolves. And so probably there was just one created kind that included dogs, wolves.
Oh, probably. That's, yeah, very precise there. Probably. Yeah, whatever. So when he says stuff like that, it's, it's probably, he's saying, whatever makes my book work. Whatever makes my book work is what happened. That is he's basically taking the conclusion and trying to work backwards to it, which is a problem.
And other dog or wolf-like creatures. Now, Adam and Eve would have contained all of the genetic information required for the various races of men. And it is no problem to envision that when God created them, he created their reproductive cells with this ability to propagate all of the different races.
Do you have any evidence of that, or is it just your book says it, so it must be true? That's the thing. We don't have any evidence that the genetic, we've got a lot of evidence to suggest that there was no Adam and Eve 6,000 years ago, for a start. Number two, there's nothing to suggest that, what is a perfect cell? This is a problem that the creationists have, that they don't understand. There's no such thing as a perfect cell. There's no such thing. In fact, the imperfection is a feature, not a bug. Right? The ability to mutate and the ability to let those mutations through without correcting them is a feature. So there's no such thing as a perfect DNA. There's no such thing. What may be perfect for one environment, and I'm using that air quotes because I don't think anything's perfect for an environment. What's advantageous to one environment is really detrimental to another. There's no such thing as perfect. It doesn't exist. They made it up. This perfect cell. It's really weird because I brought up, what was before cells? Well, probably some sort of proto-cell. And they're like, oh, you're making up stories. And then they talk about a perfect cell. It's like, I'm making up. What? Someone's telling fairy tales, but I'm not the one talking about a magic organism with perfect DNA. Come on now. It's ridiculous that's the argument they have. Oh, xenomorphs are the perfect. Well, I mean, they're the perfect predator, I think. I think that's what they said in the movie.
Now, it's important that we don't confuse this word kinds with modern day species because they're not synonymous. Many species can interbreed with one another. The best definition.
It is interesting, though. I mean, if you look at the Alien franchise and the Pandora and stuff like that. Pandora? Prometheus. I don't know why I said Pandora. That's a bit weird. If you look at Prometheus, that's panspermia, right? You've got an aliens who are the engineers coming down and starting life on Earth, right? That's basically a example of a designed species that didn't come from God, which is hilarious, because I don't believe in panspermia. There's no real evidence to suggest it, so I don't believe it. It's possible, it's possible it was a god, but without evidence, why would you believe something like that? But yeah, that's an example of, hey, it can't happen by nature. Well, panspermia isn't by nature. And it does kick the can down the road, where did the engineers come from? But, it basically says, hey, a god is not the only other option if you rule out nature. That's why these guys are so far away from showing that a god actually done it. Because they're basically saying, well, evolution, even if evolution was completely wrong, and they have not even started to disprove evolution, they've just claimed a whole bunch of stuff and said, oh, we've debunked evolution. No, you really haven't. Even if that were true, it doesn't get you, it gets you the tiniest step closer to a god. It doesn't get you in any way to a god, and especially not to the Christian God. It doesn't. You've got to show that happened, not just debunk somebody else, right? And that's what evolution does. It shows that it happened with a lot of evidence.
Of a created kind includes all those species that can interbreed with one another. I already mentioned wolves and dogs, but horses, donkeys, and zebras, they can all interbreed. Llamas and camels can interbreed. Dolphins and
Yeah, a lot of the time they're sterile. So why does that happen if they're the same kind? You know, some of them breed and then the offspring is sterile. So why is that, Mr., created kinds? I mean, we can explain it with a difference in genetic material. Even animals that are genetically similar but have different chromosomes can still breed. And often their offspring are sterile. So why is that? Because your book says they keep bringing forth after their kind. If they're the same kind, why aren't they bringing forth? So if a horse and a donkey breed, they can make a mule. Mule is sterile. It can't breed. So if they keep bringing forth after their own kind, aren't they the same kind? Aren't two mules the same kind? So why are they always sterile? Whoops. Bit of a problem there. Now we just say, hey, they're genetically similar, but they've got enough differences that the difference in genomes means that the offspring, due to various genetic reasons, will come out sterile. It's not a matter of kinds. There's no such thing as a kind. It doesn't exist. It's just whether you're genetically similar or you're not genetically similar. That's it. That's the entire explanation.
false killer whales can interbreed, and there's many other examples. And so these things can be packed together.
Right. Or the elder things from Lovecraft. Yeah. Sure. I mean, there's a million of them. Like there's infinite possible explanations, because not only if you're doing deductive, right? So deductive versus inductive, if you're unfamiliar with it. Inductive is what we do in science. We basically say, hey, we've got these series of patterns. Those patterns lead us to this conclusion kind of thing, that this will keep happening. So if we keep dropping something kind of thing, and then we work out, sort of, hey, this will happen at this rate, we can use induction to say why it's happening. Deduction is basically saying, hey, if I eliminate every other possibility, this is the only one left. And that's useful. That is absolutely useful. You can sort of say, hey, well, it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this. That must be the explanation. But, and this is a big but, if you're talking about, what created humans, there's infinite things you've got to rule out, like the elder things, like magic, like, the Blarney Stone, every possible explanation, including the ones that we haven't thought up yet. So how do you eliminate all of those? You can't. And that's why you need evidence to inductively suggest yours, not evidence against something else to deduct it as a possibility. You need to support your own cause, not attack somebody else's. But, they can't, so they don't.
Together, and it's called one created kind. And so if you're thinking on a taxonomic level, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of genera, or perhaps even family. And some.
Yeah, it varies depending on what you need it to do, right? Because if there's like genera that can interbreed, you're like, oh, no, it's got to be the family then. Yeah, no, it switches. It definitely moves up and down. And basically they say it's wherever it's wherever they can interbreed. Yeah, but their offspring are sterile. So why is that?
In some cases, orders where the created kind would fall. Now, of course, there's cases where evolution is claimed, like in antibiotic resistant bacteria. But when these things are examined, we don't see these novel increases in genetic complexity.
Okay, so genetic complexity. So that's a bit of a weird thing to say. So genetic complexity, I'm not sure what he's talking about. Like, we don't, we see it as heritable characteristics. We don't see it as genetic complexity as such. We've seen evidence of evolution observed. Like, for instance, the Cladomonas reinhardti, the algae that basically went from single cellular to multicellular. And if multicellular isn't a different kind than a single-celled organism, I don't know what is. So we've absolutely observed this, that an organism can start cooperation with other organisms to basically become a multicellular. That is an incredible thing. And we've definitely seen this, like speciation, for instance. We've seen fruit flies kept in the dark, change and then not be able to breed with other fruit flies. It's actually been observed many, many times. So I don't know what he means by genetic complexity. I have no idea. In novel increases in genetic information. Any change in the genetic sequence is different information, but I don't know what he means by increases in genetic information. Like, what does it mean to increase genetic information? I don't understand. Like, it's really, really weird the way he talks about it. Like, there's got to be some kind of perfect genome that they're moving towards, like some kind of end point that they're trying to get back to or something. It's ridiculous. That is not how evolution works. There is no genetic thing that they're trying to get to. Like this perfect Adam and Eve genome and we've never seen anybody approach it. No, because it doesn't fucking exist. You made it up. I really dislike how much this is absolutely ridiculously incorrect and, horribly misrepresented. This is what really ticks me off. It's fine to argue against evolution. What's not cool is misrepresenting the theory of evolution to put your ideas and strawman what it actually is. Because I see this all the time. It's like, oh, and I got it just the other day. Somebody said to me, I think it was yesterday, somebody said to me, but we've never seen like somebody like an organism be born with a fin. And it's like, of course we haven't. That's not how evolution works. We don't just sprout an extra leg or something like that. Like this straw manning of the theory. Like, it's fine to argue against it, but argue in good faith. Don't misrepresent what we say and then come back and go, oh, well, you expected a cat to be born from a dog and it never happened. No, we didn't expect that. Like, seriously. That's what ticks me off, is the flagrant straw manning and misrepresentation. We do observe limited variation within a created kind. We don't actually, like, what limits it? They haven't said what limits it. Like, what is the actual limit and where does that lie? They won't say. They just say, oh, there's limits. Okay, what is the mechanism that limits it? Where is that limitation for each animal? They don't know. They just say it has to be limited. Why? Because their book has to be right. It's working backwards to the conclusion. It's having the conclusion first and working towards it.
We have our switches being turned on or off in the genes, and in some cases, gene transfer, but this is always already existing genetic information. We don't have any indisputable examples.
What does he mean by already existing genetic information? Because when I pressed Hovind, this is a Hovindism, right? This is absolutely a Hovindism. He sort of says, we've not seen any new genetic information. And so when you're talking about new genetic information, any change in the sequence is new genetic information, right? So it really seemed like he's saying, hey, you have the base pairs for DNA, TAGC, taurine, adenosine, cytosine, and I always forget the G. Glucine? I think I'm saying that right. You have the 4 base pairs. We don't get any more base pairs. Yeah. And of course you've got uracil in RNA, right? Like it has instead of I believe it instead of the T, god damn it. Well, you've got a uracil in RNA, right? Like, apart from those base pairs, those base chemicals, you're not going to get any others. Like, so what do they mean by new information? Because if you mix them up, right, you mix up those base pairs, that's new information. Hasn't been seen before. It's completely new. Just like, it would be like, and the analogy that I used with Hovind was that, if you write a program never been written before, right? Like it's never been written by anybody in the world before. It's new code, right? So you write a new code, and he's basically saying adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Thymine, thank you. And uracil for RNA. Gotcha. Thanks, Sydney. I'm having a brain aneurysm today. It's kind of inconvenient. I think that sort of, so if you're coding and you write down these things, you're basically saying, hey, but there's no new letters in it. It's like, what? Like, in order to be, what constitutes new information? It's the building blocks in a new sequence. That's all it is. That's new information. Oh, no, it's not. It's got to be completely novel and new. That is new. Do you expect the base pairs to change? Because that's not what we consider new information. New information is just a sequence that we haven't seen before. That's it. So I don't know what he's talking about when he says new information. And it seems to me that Hovind and these young Earth creationists, they really think that a new sequence of base pairs that hasn't been a part of the genome of any creature before is not new information. I don't know why. Anyway.
Examples of novel increases in genetic information. We do, though, as I said, observe a limited variation within a created kind. But over time, what actually happens is the opposite.
Yeah, you've got to really show that it's created kind. Like, this is the thing. They'll just say it's created kind. They haven't shown it's created, and they haven't actually put any demarcation as to where a kind starts and ends. They say, oh, well, it's about genus level or family level. Okay. Can you actually, like, show that that's a designation? Because we're basically saying, hey, we're just slapping labels on a certain amount of genetic diversity just to separate them from one another, but they're not. These guys are saying there should be a real difference because they were created separately, and so if that thing was physically separate when they were created, there should be clear demarcations between one kind to another, and there's not.
Of evolution or devolution, or things going actually downhill. And you can call this genetic entropy, just like Dr. Seiler talked about entropy. Now, what is genetic entropy? Dr. John Sanford.
Yeah, Sanford made this up, essentially. He made this up as a concept, basically saying that the accumulation of mutations would lead to the destruction of organisms and populations over time. Unfortunately, that is not what we see in short-term species like fruit flies, bacteria, or all of the things that we basically put through the ringer. That does not happen. That does not happen. It just doesn't.
Coined this term, and he's a geneticist. And what this is the genetic degeneration of living things. It's a systematic breakdown of the biological information systems that make life alive. And this happens through genetic mutations, which are errors in the coding of life's instruction manual, which of course we know is DNA. These mutations are systematically eroding the information that encodes life's many essential functions. These random mutations systematically scramble these specifications, and they gradually but relentlessly destroy these programming instructions that are essential for life.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why people age and die. It's definitely a large reason, mutations within the cells. There's also sort of cells are instructed to perform apoptosis. So when you get a certain amount of telomere degeneration, basically the telomeres put a life timer on the cell. So after a certain time, they're told to engage in apoptosis and basically self-destruct. Sometimes that doesn't happen for various reasons. It isn't just mutation. Did somebody raid me? Was this a raid, or is this just a lot of people just descended on me with the full force of the internet? So there are various reasons why, and mutation is a huge part of it. Sure. But He's really talking about individuals, individuals at this level, right? He's talking about individuals breaking down over time due to the accumulation of mutations within their body. Well, guess what? That's fine, because with individuals, they don't breed at the end of their life cycle, right? So your fruit fly doesn't get to, usually they last about, I think it's mayflies last about 24 hours. By the time the most of the mutations have built up within them, they've already bred ages ago. So it's not a problem. Okay, so he's trying to say, he's doing a sort of population error. He's doing well, this applies to the individual, it should apply to the whole. What is it? Oh, God damn it. Ember, help me. It's applying the same thing to small, one part as to the entire whole. A division composition error. Division composition error. So he's basically going, okay, well, all of these mutations build up and kill the individual. That should apply to the entire population. Well, hold on a second there, champ. Just because that destroys individuals doesn't mean it applies to the entire population. Because when they build up in the individual, composition division fallacy. Yep, thank you. Before they build up in the organism, that organism's already passed on its genetic information. So what applies to the individual does not necessarily apply to the whole. And that is the fallacy, sort of saying, hey, because of this one, sort of part of it does this, it either can't do this or this happens to the entire thing. No. So your brain got it. Oh, mate, I'm really, really tired. I gotta admit, but that's okay. That's all right. I will soldier on. I will soldier on. I'm very tired, but that's okay.
We know that our cells become more mutant and more divergent from each other every day. By the time we're old, our cells have accumulated tens of thousands of mutations, and this mutation accumulation is in fact the primary reason we grow old and we die.
Yeah, I'd say it probably is the primary reason. There's other reasons as well, definitely other reasons as well. But yeah, so the thing is, by the time you've hit like halfway up this graph, that's probably where you stop breeding and passing along your genetic information. Just saying. I don't know why this is relevant. I really don't. I really do not understand why this is relevant. Because just because mutations build up among us and we grow old and die, and as I said, just apoptosis, and there's a lot of other mechanisms that sort of cause us to get problems with our body. It doesn't mean that it applies to the population. Why does it apply to the population, like all of us in general? I have no idea.
Now, because mutations arise in all of our cells, including our reproductive cells, we pass these mutations, many of them at least, on to our children.
Right. So it's not necessarily bad mutations. Some of them are beneficial. That's the point. That's the entire point. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's part of the process. Passing on, if we didn't pass on those mutations, where's the diversity? Where's the diversity?
And so mutations are accumulating continuously in the population, with each generation becoming more mutant than the last. So you are more mutant than your parents, and your parents are more mutant than your grandparents.
In relation to them, yes. But this is the problem with their thinking. They think that there's one DNA code that is just perfect in every... No, that doesn't exist, right? When you say more mutant, you're saying, hey, it's more degraded. And that's not a thing. That's not a thing, right? You may have a like, for instance, just say you're an organism and another one, we have somebody with light bones, right? Like really light bones, Okay, there is double bone density. That is a confirmed genetic mutation among some of our population, which A, makes people heavier for their size, their bones don't break as easily, and they actually have more trouble swimming. Now, if you have lighter bones, that's probably disadvantageous, except if you're a bird, and then it's incredibly advantageous. So what you're calling a degradation in a human having, really light bones is actually really beneficial to, say, a bird, or to just say you live on the water, right? You live in a houseboat, okay, and you have to swim all the time. You may be a really great swimmer because you've got light bones. That's an advantage. You don't need the bones that will be incredibly durable and incredibly heavy. That's the whole point. There is no perfect cell. There's no perfect genome. It's just whatever is adapted to the environment and whatever isn't. Like this whole idea of, well, you're getting more mutant. From what? From what? In relative to the one you started with, sure, but it doesn't mean that the one you started with is automatically better and the one you've arrived at is automatically worse. That's not a thing. Aye.
Where not only do we undergo genetic degeneration personally, this is happening on a population level. And again, this is evolution going in the wrong way.
Yeah. There's no such thing as evolution going in the wrong way. That shows a complete misunderstanding of what evolution actually is. There's no wrong way for evolution. There is what persists and survives and what doesn't. That's it. There's no wrong way. And we see this in nature with different animals having different traits, all to overcome the same problem. For instance, in Africa or whatever, you've got leaves only high up because the trees with leaves down below get eaten and they die. So you have giraffes with long necks, but you also have, baboons and monkeys that can climb trees, right? Like they have the same problem. They've overcome it, and there's no correct way to go. It's only whatever adapts to the environment. That's it. There's no perfect cell that we're trying to get to. And the whole idea that they're trying to write this perfect cell into biology or this perfect genome into biology, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. You've got to show that. But they're like, my book says Adam and Eve, therefore that's the perfect cell. Well then, show it.
And we're only discovering this because of modern genetics. Natural selection can slow this process down, but it can't stop this process on the population level. And why is that? Well, the vast majority of mutations don't actually express themselves in a way that they can even be selected by natural selection. The vast majority of mutations are what we call nearly neutral.
So nearly neutral mutations are ones that are basically neutral, but maybe on the slightly deleterious side. And that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, we carry those mutations with us. But what they're not getting is when they build up to the point where it's selected against, they will be cancelled out. And the beneficial ones will be selected for. It doesn't matter. It still works. It's just that, hey, they're basically going, well, these build-up of mutations will keep going until the entire population collapses. And that's not what happens. It's not what we see in the labs when we're doing experiments on organisms like fruit flies or bacteria or any of those things. It's not what we see when we actually study it. It's not what we see. What we see is that the mutations will build up within organisms. Those organisms which carry too many detrimental mutations will be selected against. And the ones with beneficial mutations will undergo something called purifying selection, which means that the mutation that they have that's beneficial will become more and more a part of the population until it is fixed in the population as a standard part of their genome, right? Purifying selection. So yeah, that's basically what happens, and it's sort of like, well, that's what we see when we actually do experiments on living organisms. And yes, the life cycles have to be incredibly low because we don't have thousands of years with, something with 100-year life cycle. That's why we use fruit flies and bacteria and stuff, because they replicate very fast. And algae, they replicate incredibly fast.
So they're just slightly detrimental. But this buildup of slightly detrimental mutations eventually takes its toll.
That should be happening for fruit flies exactly the same as humans. Like, that's the thing. They have, that should not, like, why is it that every time we study something, it has this elimination of accumulated detrimental mutations and purifying selection for beneficial mutations, both of which you say are not happening? But we see it and there's no reason why we should go, oh, well, that can't happen with other animals. Oh, just every single one we've studied so far. Yeah, okay, that sounds likely.
And of course, there is a universal tendency for all biological information systems to degrade over time.
There's a universal tendency for all biological information systems to degrade. I don't even know what he means by that. Does he mean that, like, people grow old and die? Because that's... Or things grow old and die? Okay. That doesn't... Like, again, composition division fallacy. Right, you're basically saying, hey, because one person grows old and die, the entire population will. No, it doesn't work like that. No. What are you talking about? That's very, 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 very weird. That's incredibly weird. That's like saying, okay, because my finger can fit through a hole, my entire body should be able to. Why? I'm baffled. I'm baffled.
Now, modern studies in genetics have determined that there's approximately 100 new mutations per generation.
Depends on the chromosome. Depends on the location. Because some don't undergo recombination, there's no passing over of the genome, like for Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA, then mutations occur a bit less, or changes occur a bit less, I guess I should say, like, changes in the genome. But they have been shown to, for instance, the mitochondrial DNA, mutations happen a lot more in the control areas than the coding areas. So yeah, there's the mitochondrial DNA is incredibly stable, for instance, while the Y chromosome generally not.
Virtually all of these are harmful. Listen to this quote from Dr. Sanford. Kondrashov, an evolutionist who is an expert on this subject, has advised me that virtually all the human geneticists he knows agree that man is degenerating genetically. That paper indicates human fitness is declining at 3 to 5% per generation. Dr. Sanford doesn't think it's quite that bad.
Yeah, but what he thinks is that when they pile up, you will get them eliminated, right? Like, so nobody's saying, hey, these won't pile up. What we've done with medicine is increase the tolerance for those mutations. And that's okay. Like, we've just increased the tolerance where we can treat certain things that would ordinarily have exited people. Let's put it that way, right? Like, at a certain point in history, you get, a certain disease, you're done. Like, you're in medieval times and you get a blood-borne disease. That's it. See ya. It's a genetic problem, comes up, your heart stops, you're gone. Now we can treat it. Right, we've increased the tolerance. But that doesn't mean that, hey, it's all going to collapse. No, people are still selected against if they have genetic disease. And we try as much as possible to save them, but we have limitations. Every doctor will tell you that. There's limitations on what we can do for people. Trying to surpass our limitations is the history of humanity. The history of humanity. So we've increased our tolerance for them, these accumulated ones, but it doesn't mean that the entire population can't keep going. That's not what it means.
Bad, but he says, we at least agree that fitness is going down, not up. There really is no debate on current human genetic degeneration. Now, computer simulations have been created to test this concept, and realistic parameters are inputted, and it's found that after only about 200 generations with the current mutation rate, we see a decrease in fitness of about 80% in a population. And this is being quite generous. This is where about half of each generation is being eliminated via natural selection.
Okay, so this is a problem, and you know, I just love when, you know, he basically gets the scientific information from Cole. If you can't see that, hang on, I can probably zoom in, I think. No, I can't zoom in. No, I'm incapable. I'm sorry. Anyway, down in the corner here, you can see that it's from Colby Center, God Family Genetics Bible Perspective. Yeah, the real prestigious organization you've got there, champ. Okay, so this is based upon Stanford's paper, which was, I'll just get my documents up because I do have both of these in here. So Stanford's paper was sort of a statistical look at mutation rates as applied to sort of genetic information, like how, you know, what level would cause a population collapse if you accumulated these mutations, right? So he looked at the mutation rate and applying that, and his paper was let's see. Okay, so his paper was Refuting Nested Hierarchies and Homology as Evidence for Common Ancestry. Right, it's a bit full on, I know. Oh no, that's Donnie's paper. That's terrible. That's not his. I should be more organized. I do apologize. There's one of the papers I need. Definitely that one. Can I open that in Open with Chrome? Yeah, okay. The other was Stanford. And there was another guy that wrote it as well, and I don't remember his name. Starts with a B. Yeah, here it is. Fundamental Open with Chrome. Okay, and I should be able to zoom in on that. Yeah. Okay. So this is Stanford and Basner, sorry. So this was 2007. It was actually sort of published in 2018 in the Journal of Mathematical Biology. And this is important because basically they essentially sort of appealed to the maths. That's sort of not your standard, you know, Nature or something that does pure biology. It's basically a maths journal for people doing maths in biology, which is important, but you know, it is a credible sort of thing. So he attacked Fisher's fundamental theorem of natural selection, saying that sort of it's very, very hard to understand. He does a lot of math here, but if the mutation rate builds up, the population will collapse from the amount of mutations it has. And you know, he sort of did the math, but there's a number of problems with that. So he sort of says that the deleterious mutations will build up and build up. These nearly neutral ones will build up and cause a sort of, you know, the population to end in such a way that they could not sustain their population, right? And he did a lot of maths for that. There's a number of problems with that. So I'll take you to maybe the conclusions kind of thing. Yeah, so understanding mutations was very limited, and his famous theorem was less than ideal. His formulation was cumbersome and not suited to dynamical analysis. Well, we've found that Fisher's formula is actually correct when we study actual populations in the lab. His formulation didn't allow the modeling of newly arising mutations. Yeah, it kind of did. It kind of did. So, look, what I'll do is I'll get up a response to it, and that's from Zachary B. Hancock and friend of the channel, Daniel Stern Cardinal, right? They actually addressed it, and hopefully it will have my no, it did not keep my highlights. All right, that sucks. Well, I've got to use Chrome or else I can't really show it to you. So they're pretty scathing, to be honest with you. So and I love how they call it B and S, like BS throughout the entire thing is actually hilarious. I'll try and find the relevant sections because yeah, they do a lot. Oh, it did keep my highlights. So so basically, number 3 is misrepresentation of Fisher's theorem, right? So pretty scathing. Fisher's theorem will exhaust the genetic variance of the population, and that fitness increase will effectively halt, and that's sort of what they're saying. Selection must reduce genetic variance all the way to 0. At this point, effective selection must stop and fitness must become static. This observation acts as the inspiration for their model and leads to a lengthy discussion about the distribution of fitness effects of de novo mutations. In their calculation for Fisher's theorem to be complete, there needs to be a constant influx of novel mutations. Hence, any complete theorem should consider the empirical DFE. I can't remember what DFE was. Distribution of fitness effects. Incorporating what they contend is a representative distribution of fitness effects, they perform a series of simulations with their uptake derivation and find that fitness, far from increasing unbounded, decreases and results in population collapse. So, Dr. Dan and Daniel and Zachary sort of sum up what I was saying about the paper. That's basically what they're saying, right? They question whether Fisher thought it would continue unbounded, but I'll get, and they do a lot of calculations. It's very, very dense, but I'll get down to, hopefully it kept. Okay, so we modeled our deleterious fitness effects roughly after, that's a prominent paper in the field. However, we note that our deleterious distribution is not bimodal. Instead, we model considerably fewer lethal mutations when the majority of fitness effects being near 0. Okay, and that's exactly what he was talking about, right? So their entire premise is accumulation of these nearly neutral fitness effects will build up over time and cause there to be no move towards fitness. Okay, so static fitness. Instead, they modeled theirs after a very, trying to do exactly what they were saying. This distribution superficially resembles that of Arabidopsis thaliana, which that is an organism that we've actually studied, right? So they're basically modeling it after living creatures. I think that's a plant. Hold it. Yeah, it's Thale cress. Yeah. So it's after a plant and maybe more reflective of deleterial fitness effects of multicellular eukaryotes than that of Sanjan. Specifically, for deleterious mutations, we use this distribution. We specify that 99% of all mutations are strictly deleterious, though most have very small fitness effects. In this way, we have refrained from targeting too far from BS's deleterious fitness effects, distribution of fitness effects, except that we include a much larger proportion of intermediate and severely deleterious mutations, right? So they're really being conservative when it comes to replicating their work. We contend this is justified by the typically multimodal nature of deleterious mutation distribution, quoting a previous paper, as well as from measures from mutational fitness effects in humans, right? So they're modeling it after things that we see in real life, including humans, right? So, so what happens is, what the problem is that in this graph A, you've got mutation rate, right? You've got the rate at which mutations occur. But that is not the fixation rate, right? So fixation versus mutation rate is something that I probably should explain. Mutations are the changes that come up. They're like mutations. Everyone, you know what mutations are. They're changes in the genome accidentally that come up and get through, causing some sort of change. Now, fixation rate is how often those become part of the organism's standard DNA. right? So like I said earlier, if you have an organism with an advantage, it will get passed around the organisms and become a standard part of its DNA. Okay, so that's fixation. It means it's fixing it within the population, making it a standard part of the population. Now, the problem comes that if you just look at the mutation rate, you're not actually looking at the ones that get through. You're looking at the ones that are weeded out, right? Yeah, some of those mutations which are nearly neutral, that might have a slight deleterious effect, are going to get through. But at a certain point, that organism is not going to have that mutation fixed into the population. Some will, if they're not that deleterious, they don't change very much. Some will, but that's not the same as the mutation rate. It's not the same as how often they come up. So they really have a problem with not understanding that when you're looking at a population's genome, you're not looking at the mutation rate of an individual, you're looking at the fixation rate of mutations in that population. It's a problem because those are two separate things, right? I don't know why they don't understand this, but so A is observed distribution of all fitness effects. Most of them are detrimental, very few are beneficial. This plot has been truncated at negative 0.1. So it's been truncated there to permit you to see it, but they go on further. It extends to negative 1.8. And this is calculated fixation. This is calculated where S is the mutational effect and N is the population size. It serves to demonstrate that despite having a small effect and occurring more rarely, they always almost exceed the fixation probability of the deleterious mutations. So basically, it's basically saying that deleterious mutations don't get fixed and beneficial ones absolutely do, even if they're just slightly beneficial. So the DFE is the distribution of fixation effects is contingent on a distance of population is to some phenotypic optimum. That's like this perfect cell that they're talking about, the perfect genome they're talking about, right? And furthermore, on the need for recurrent compensation due to deleterious mutations. Simulating a beneficial distribution in the absence of this context, right? So in the absence of your perfect Adam and Eve cell, indicates that there is no phenotypic optimum and that the population can perpetually increase in fitness. So basically what they did is they polluted their study. This is BNS, this is Stanford and Basma. They polluted their study with the conclusion that they wanted to reach already, that there was a perfect optimum genome that it had to go towards, right? But that's not how it's supposed to be read. And if you take that out, if you take what they put in, their unproved conclusion out, it actually works to perpetually increase in fitness. Second, since beneficial mutations are promoted by natural selection, they can fix faster and with greater probability than deleterious mutations, and they showed that in the graph. They showed it in the math and how they worked it out, but that was what the graph was talking about. Due to this, if a sufficiently small beneficial distribution is not chosen, the population will rapidly increase in size and fitness will go to infinity despite the overwhelming preponderance of deleterious mutations. 100%. What he sort of said, I'm not sure if I highlighted, what he sort of said is that if mutations build up, the population will dip and then it will recover. So this dipping and recovering is sort of what is expected and what we see in real life. Third, past theoretical empirical work. So this is actual lab work and working on experiments with organisms has found that distribution of beneficial mutations is exponential, with most being of small effect sizes. But see this other paper for more information. Finally, nearly all empirically estimated distribution of fitness effects include a detectable proportion of beneficial mutations. right? So, and contrary to the findings of BS, our populations did not go extinct, and despite strong deleterious mutation pressure, all showed positive rates of growth. Right, figure 3. That's the trajectory. So it dips first, and then it recovers, and you can see that in the graph. Like it dips and then recovers. Yeah, populations, here's where I said it. Populations initially fell well below the specified carrying capacity due to mutation pressure. However, as beneficial mutations arose over the course of the simulation, they collectively compensated for the loss of fitness, and the population grew to be the carrying capacity. So they recovered with beneficial mutations. Okay, so here's where it's absolutely scathing, and you've got to understand, okay, it may not sound scathing, okay, it may sound like, oh, that's not that scathing. For a scientific paper, this is scathing. Naively, it appears that BS are suggesting that Fisher's theorem attempted and failed in their approximation. So if you add in a perfect, organism, it fails to get there. So that's their approximation. That's not what Fisher said. To provide a mathematical principle in explaining how evolutionary progress might be explained, and they're accepting the term fitness as a stand-in for their own ideological view of progress. So he's basically saying that their idea of fitness is towards, in humans towards Adam and Eve, in lions towards the lion that they created. It's their own ideological view and not anything scientifically based. This may be dismissed as mere speculation, except that they argue in Beisner et al., and this is Beisner, one of the guys that wrote the BS paper, 2021, that fitness is best understood in terms of net functionality. Hence, they would contend that a human has more net functionality and hence higher fitness than a prokaryote. This helps explain why BS consistently assert that Fisher's theorem meant unlimited fitness increase. And that's kind of scathing, and they go on to say, given the preponderance of more explicit discussions in their general works, we find it reasonable that the purpose of BS was to provide peer-reviewed support for the argument that genomes are too complex to be the product of evolutionary processes, inevitably decaying towards extinction, and therefore are the product of an external intelligence. To support this metaphysical conclusion, BS misinterpret Fisher's theorem and make unjustified leaps from theoretical mutation distributions to real-world implications. Yes. And they're also adding into that theory their own theology, that there were perfect organisms. What that means, Adam and Eve, the first created lion, the first created lobster, whatever it is. There's no justification for that. These errors are not incidental, and in our estimation cannot plausibly be explained apart from the motivated reasoning employed by BS. We demonstrate that they are required to reach conclusions stated elsewhere by BS, that genetic systems are inevitably decaying and therefore cannot have survived the known multi-billion timeline of Earth's biosphere. What they're basically saying is that they have a metaphysical conclusion in their theology and they're working towards it. In a scientific paper, that, my friends, is scathing. That is absolutely scathing. They're basically saying, hey, they had the conclusion they wanted to reach and they fudged the numbers to get there. They added in this perfect organism. They changed how Fisher himself was using the definitions and then misrepresent. And then they went to a mathematical journal for biology rather than a mainstream biology journal. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that journal. It's just, it really is for mathematical concepts and not overarching biological theory kind of thing. So, this was scathing, and if Stanford had any credibility left, this paper just demolished it, because they absolutely showed how they did how they performed their calculations was 100% biased towards the conclusion that they wanted to reach. Because when you take out the conclusion they want to reach, suddenly evolution works just fine. And that is, I mean, I cannot tell you how awful that is as a scientist. You're a terrible scientist if that's what you're doing. You're terrible. But hey, big salute to Dr. Dan Cardinal and the et al. Zachary, well done. Well done to go and replicate their study without the bias in their study to show that you're not going to get to this conclusion unless you already believe in the conclusion that you want to reach, right? Like, you will not get to BS's, Basner and Stanford's conclusion unless you're like, well, we want to get to that conclusion. Absolutely terrible from them. And Stanford's got no credibility left. He's got none left. The only people that will employ him is Christian organizations who want to, like, mainstream Christian, no, just young earth creationist Christians. He has no credibility left.
Now, if you compare that graph to the declining lifespans of the patriarchs.
Yeah, declining lifespans of Noah's descendants. Yeah, and this is the thing. They take the 950 age of Noah or whatever, and then they say, oh, and the next one said it was 700 years and 600. That exactly matches up with our mutation rate. And don't forget that that mutation rate is not the fixation rate. It's not the amount. I don't know why they're looking at the Bible and going, well, if you look at the Bible, it matches the mutation rate. Yeah, what about the fixation rate of all humans? It doesn't, does it?
As we read about in Genesis, of course, if you've read Genesis, you'll remember these long lifespans. Well, if you plot out these long lifespans after the flood, what happens is you can create this curve, and it's quite interesting that it fits this fitness decline quite well. Now, of course, this is not proof, it's just quite interesting, but from a creation perspective, it's quite likely that Adam and Eve, of course, would have been created perfectly genetically, but after
yeah, and I agree with you, Sydney. I 100% agree with you. They say that mutations are approximately equal to fixation rates. Yeah, but they weed out the deleterious mutations, and purifying selection selects for the advantageous ones. Right? So just because the rate's the same, what they're missing is it's like the mutation rate has a huge amount of deleterious mutations, but the fixation rate doesn't. Like, that's the key here, and they just ignore it and lie. They just lie. They just lie about it.
The fall, these mutations began to accumulate, and as they began to accumulate, the lifespans began to decrease. Now, when I took genetics in university, I was taught about a concept called junk DNA. And
yeah, junk DNA, yes. So in the past, we've thought that a huge proportion of the genome has no effect whatsoever. But with knockout tests, we've discovered that a lot of it does. But with knockout tests, we've also discovered that there's still sort of junk DNA. It's just way smaller than we initially thought. Right?
Junk DNA was a very powerful argument because it was said that 98% of our genomes were just junk.
I don't think it was that high. I'm not sure it was that high. I don't think it was that high. But yeah, a large proportion. We found out it's not. But that's not a problem, because there still is junk DNA, because we can knock things out and it seems to have no effect whatsoever in phenotype or at all. So I don't. Maybe it does, but as far as we can tell, it does nothing. But I'll grant you, we thought there was a lot of junk DNA, and turns out it's not as much as we thought. Sure, it wasn't priests and people in the church doing these studies. It was geneticists and people that study evolution coming up with this. So
it was useless. It was just genetic garbage, and so it was taught that this was good evidence for atheism, because why would a god create such a...
No, I don't think it was really used as good evidence for atheism. I think it was just they had a problem with that because they were like, well, the genome should be almost perfect kind of thing. It should be a perfect thing because we're made in the image of God and all this stuff. And we're like, hey, we found what we found. You know, we found what we found. Oh, hello. Hello, secular pagan mum. Yeah, you know, we found what we found. And, you know, you're sort of saying, no, it can't be. And it's like, well, that's what we found. And as we've gone along, we've gone, hey, some of it does have functionality for immune response and things like that we weren't aware of. But at the moment, they're basically saying, well, there are some genes we can knock out. It does nothing. So, you know, we still have junk DNA. It's just not as prevalent as we first thought.
Junkie.
But I don't think no one's, and this is the thing, they always frame it as, oh, these people said this to argue against Christianity. No one's arguing, like no one's doing evolution to argue against Christianity. No one's doing it to, oh, you know, take down the church or show that your beliefs, nobody's doing that. Nobody really cares. You can believe in Christianity and do evolution and genetic research all you want. We're just finding what we're finding, right? No one's like this framing as, oh, it's all these scientists trying to take down Christianity. No, they're not. They're just doing their work, man. Like no one's trying to do anything. It's just, what do we observe? What inferences we can draw? What can we conclude from this? And when it goes against your book or your interpretation of your book, I might add, that's your interpretation because other people believe and interpret it differently. You go, oh, you're trying to take down and that's the only reason. No one's trying to take down your book or your church or whatever. We're just trying to find the truth. That's it. That's all. And we do that using science. That's all. No one's attacking you. No one's trying to take you down. If we find something and publish it, if you have a problem, it's your problem. It's not ours. We don't care. But then you coming back and misrepresenting the science in order to try to get your stories, your mythological stories into science is the problem. It's the problem.
Genome. In addition, it was a perfect repository for all of these bad mutations. And so the argument was, well, it doesn't really matter that most mutations are detrimental because they can just build up in the junk DNA and then they won't really have an effect on our genetics.
Well, they don't really need to, as the previous paper showed, like beneficial mutations heavily sway in favor of fixation. So they kind of, you know, purify and then the detrimental mutations are weeded out. So it doesn't have to build up. We've learnt a lot in the last like 20, 30 years about genetics, evolution, stuff like that. And that's the beauty of science. It always changes. When we find something that is wrong, we say, hey, that's wrong. And we change it. We change our minds. We go in different directions. That's why it's so successful. We don't just hold our book and go, no, it must be right. How do we make it right? That's not what we're doing. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Now, this encode thing, encode is very contentious. I'll get to the part where it
By 2012, phase 2 of the Human Genome Project was complete. And this was a multi-million-dollar international study. And they were trying to determine how much of the genome was actually active. There were over 400 scientists involved in this, called ENCODE scientists, and they discovered that most of the genome, even the junk DNA, in quotation marks junk, that is not translated into protein, is actually used, and it's actively...
Okay, so used has a very specific meaning there, because the ENCODE project didn't say what was used. They basically said what had metabolic activity. Right, and this is a problem because they're equating necessarily used, like being, you know, part of a organism, they have to have it, to having metabolic activity. Those two things are not the same things. One thing is not like the other. Just because something has metabolic activity doesn't mean it's being used. It's just doing its thing.
Transcribed into RNA. So it turns out that different parts of a gene can be used for building many different proteins. So any gene is composed of multi-purpose building blocks. The ENCODE results have completely changed the way we view the genome. Instead of it being just a protein-generating engine, the genome can now be seen as an RNA computer doing multiple calculations, primarily within the so-called junk regions of the gene.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's Sanford's quote from God, Family, and Genetics. I would say that the top part is probably from mainstream science, and the genome can be seen as an RNA computer. That's probably Sanford adding his own interpretation. Look, it's a good analogy, but I'm not sure, it is accurately saying, hey, it's literally an RNA computer. I'm not sure. I suspect a little bit of fuckery there, like where you've basically taken something from mainstream science and then Sanford's quoted it in one of his papers, from God, Family, Genetics, Bible perspective, no less, and he's tacked something on the end, and then you're quoting that guy. That is not a paper. That's why we want citations from scientific papers, because his audience, who are lay people, right? They don't know that isn't an actual paper, right? Like, that it may be part of a paper that Sanford's tacked something on the end of. And this is the problem. That's why we want citations from actual papers and not from young earth creationist websites, because they got a habit of doing this.
Genome. Within any given stretch of human DNA, there are multiple overlapping codes. This means that a change to a specific letter in a nucleotide might affect multiple different genetic messages. Darwinian evolution can't account for this or for the origin or preservation of these overlapping codes. Now, True Science, this ENCODE project, has falsified the myth.
True Science, the ENCODE project. Yeah, no, I don't think you get to term what's true and false science. Like, that's terrible. This whole pseudoscience thing, yeah.
That almost all the genome is junk. And the only reason they thought the genome was mostly junk is because they were all working on evolutionary paradigms, that they thought that the genome was just cobbled together over millions of years of random changes.
No, I don't think that's why they thought that most of it was junk, because we couldn't find any use for it. Like, I think that's a lot of the time why we thought it was junk. I'm not sure that, like, with our current understanding of evolution, where deleterious mutations are eliminated before they're fixed in the population, that we would actually say it would lead to that.
When the latest ENCODE results were published in a series of papers in 2012, a Science magazine article headline, ENCODE Project Writes Eulogy for Junk DNA. And listen to what this senior scientist with ENCODE affirms. Almost every nucleotide is associated with a function of some sort or another. And we now know where they are, what binds to them, what their associations are, and more.
Do you see almost every nucleotide, genetic letter? Almost. So there's still junk DNA. It's just a lot smaller than we thought it was. Yeah. So you're not. So they're trying to say it as, oh, there is no junk DNA. No, that's not what they said. They said that there's less than we thought. It's this black and white principle that theists do so often. It either is tons of junk or none at all. No, that's not the case. There's a whole range of options in between there, but you want to suggest that, oh, there is no junk DNA. Doesn't exist. That's not what he's saying.
So the parts of our genome that were thought to be junk DNA are actually essential for life. And this is something that Darwinian evolution...
Well, some parts of our genome thought to be junk DNA are actually essential to life. A lot of it. But there are some parts that we can knock out and life goes on without a problem, without any effect on the phenotype at all. So in that case, but why doesn't he say that? Why doesn't he say, hey, there is a lot less junk DNA than we originally thought? It's because he wants his audience to think there's no junk DNA. Right?
Evolutionists haven't come to grips with. Their refusal to accept what the data is saying is not because they have some sort of sound scientific basis for doing so. It's because of an ideological commitment to Darwin. They're aware this collapse of the junk DNA story is a death blow to Darwinian theory. And listen to what one ardent evolutionary advocate and scientist, Dan Grauer, has gone on record saying. If the human genome is indeed devoid of junk DNA, as implied by the ENCODE project, then a long, undirected evolutionary process cannot explain the human genome. If ENCODE is right, then evolution is wrong.
Right. Yes, he said that. He absolutely said that. And it was like, but they're taking it out of context and they're misrepresenting what he's saying. He's saying Genome Encode Project is wrong about their conclusions. And Dan Grauer basically said that the Encode Project are not scientists, they're lab technicians trying to talk about biology, which is kind of scathing, but he was very scathing. And I'll get up what he said, because basically he's saying that the Encode people are wrong, okay, that they're wrong about what they concluded. And I'll sort of explain why as we go along. But he's not saying that evolution is wrong. He's saying that the Encode people are wrong. Okay, so when the human genome was sequenced in 2000, only 26,000 genes appeared to be directing the manufacture of proteins and growth control, and 98% of our DNA was written off, right? That wasn't because of evolution. It was because that only appeared to be directing the manufacture of proteins and growth control, right? Like, this is 25 years ago, quarter of a century ago, okay? So it wasn't because, oh, well, that's what our evolution would lead us to. No, it's because when we sequenced it, that's what we could find. But then Encode researchers claim to have identified more than 10,000 new genes and suggest up to 18% of our DNA is responsible for regulating other genes. They said about 80% of DNA had a biochemical function. Well, hold it a second, that leaves 20% as doing nothing. Well, that's a long way from no junk DNA, isn't it? I mean, that's 1/5, isn't it? Just check. Hold it, I'll check my math on that one. Yeah, I'm right. That's like 1/5 of the DNA. Hold it. They said there's no junk DNA. Well, yeah, there's a reason why they don't actually accurately represent that kind of thing. The group also identified where defects in DNA could lead persons susceptible to illness such as Crohn's disease, diabetes, bipolar, etc. So Grau said that was absurd. And others, including scientists from Johns Hopkins University. Okay, Johns Hopkins University is probably the most prestigious medical university in the world. They accuse Encode of using analytical methods that yield biased errors and inflate estimates of functionality. And they say it reveals a basic misunderstanding of evolutionary biology. Just because a piece of DNA has biological activity does not mean it has an important function in a cell. The Encode people don't seem to have grasped that point. They completely exaggerated the amount of human DNA has a role to play in our cells. Most of the human genome is devoid of function, and these people are wrong to say otherwise. Because they didn't measure functionality. That's important. They measured biological activity or metabolic activity. So, but biological activity, basically. Yeah, this is big science, and big science should, if nothing else, generate masses of reliable data. They haven't done that. When they published their results, it was claimed its conclusions would necessitate the writing of textbooks. Yes, but only those textbooks about marketing, media hype, and public relations. So he's been scathing of them. But Bernie said this is just a complaint about big science, about big projects that absorb a lot of money. To sort of, dismiss the protests of people in Johns Hopkins as saying, oh, they just don't like how much money we spent. I don't think so. Yeah, so, and absolutely, Sydney, I want to make that clear. It is still debated. It's absolutely still debated. Yes, it's very contentious what the Encode project actually meant, but all of the experts in biology say that biochemical activity is not automatically functional for the survival of the organism, or isn't necessary for the organism. No. And so I think that, it probably will turn out to be, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it will probably turn out to be a number somewhere in between the two. Like, the Encode project is saying, hey, we uncovered this amazing thing that all of it is necessary, 80% is necessary. It'll probably be somewhere in between the 80% to the 2% kind of thing. Probably, somewhere in between, depending on what we find. But this whole idea, there is no junk DNA, it's all essential, that he's trying to suggest in his video, that these guys are trying to suggest in their video, is absolutely a misrepresentation. It absolutely is. And he's basically saying, hey, if the Encode people are right about all of this having the thing, then evolution is false. He's basically saying, it's like saying, if this guy is right about his light studies, then the sky is not blue. He's trying to use it as we have so much evidence for this, it's ridiculous. So he's wrong. He's basically saying ENCODE is wrong. Okay, that's what he's saying. He's not saying evolution is wrong. He's saying ENCODE is wrong. And it would be like someone saying, hey, if their study on optics is true, then the sky isn't blue. Like, he can't be right. And there's some very good reasons as to why ENCODE is not right, that 80% has necessary function within the cell.
Now, we have other evidence from genetics that the creation account is accurate. If you've ever read about something called mitochondrial Eve, this is genetic evidence of a literal Eve, the mother of us all. And in fact, all geneticists now agree that there is one mother of us all.
Oh, it's Creationist greatest hits. Creationists greatest hits. They don't agree that there's one mother of us all. That isn't what they're saying. That's not what they're saying. They're saying other women were around at the time. So mitochondrial Eve is the last unbroken female line that we have. Like that is an unbroken line. So there's other women around, but if she only had boys, for instance, right? That wouldn't be an unbroken line. Her mitochondria would not have been passed on. Nobody is saying that it's the mother of us all. No one's saying that. Literally, nobody's saying that. We're saying that it's the last unbroken line of mitochondrial DNA going back. And they're not saying that she was the only woman. And they're not saying that there weren't women before that. That's just the longest unbroken chain.
The only thing that's disputed is at what time that was.
Because mitochondrial DNA is passed through the female. So if you're a mother and you have all boys, that's where that lineage of mitochondrial DNA will end. Because they don't pass it on. They get their mitochondrial DNA from another woman, right? Then they pass that one on. So an unbroken line means females all the way down, baby. That's what they're saying. That mitochondrial DNA was passed from woman to 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 woman with no male in between. That's all. That's all. Because the male can't pass it on. Can't do it. Impossible. Doesn't mean they're the only ones.
Over 800 human mitochondrial DNA sequences have been analyzed from all over the world, and a very close approximation of Eve's mitochondrial DNA has been reconstructed. The average divergence from this original mitochondrial sequence, which we call Eve, is only 22 mutations, even though the most mutant individuals are up to 100. This is completely out of line with what evolutionary predictions were.
No. I will tell, like, that is absolutely just wrong. For mitochondrial Eve, the mutation rate is actually a lot slower. Don't forget that there is no recombination and something called passing over. It's when, say, a chromosome switches with the partner, basically. They switch genetic sequences with the partner. I know it sounds like a budget, speak to the dead show on TV, on network TV, but it's not. It's basically where the two sequences switch their genomes. They basically pass information back and forth when it recombines. So it doesn't do any of that. So it's not highly variable. I'll just find out what the rate is. The mutation in human mitochondrial DNA was 0.2 substitution per base. So published the first estimated age of mitochondria at 180,000 years ago. 180,000 years. And that was the first study. And now sort of we've got 140 to 200 thousand years ago for mitochondrial Eve. Just finding the rate. Okay. The variation in mitochondrial DNA between different people can be used to estimate the time back to a common ancestor, such as mitochondrial Eve. This works because along any particular line of descent, mitochondrial DNA accumulates mutations at the rate of approximately 1 every 3,500 years. A certain number of these new variants will survive into modern times and be identifiable as distinct lineages. At the same time, some branches, including very old ones, come to an end when the last family in a distinct branch has no daughters, right? Like, so that's all that happens to end the line. Mitochondrial Eve is the most common matrilineal ancestor for all modern humans. Whenever one of the two most ancient branch lines die out by producing only non-matrilinear descendants, the mitochondrial recent common ancestor will move to a recent female ancestor, always the most recent mother to have more than one daughter with living maternal line descendants alive today. So as sort of these lines die out, we move it on to somebody else's. You know, they're the person that inherited the oldest mitochondrial DNA. So yeah, one mutation every 3,500 years. Which, you know, 2 mutations and you're already outside of the 6,000 years you think the world has been around for. Yeah, and that's true. It's in a population. Yeah. So that's sort of part of the problem. They're not understanding what it actually is. So it's not the only woman there. It's not a fixed individual over time. And it's not the most recent ancestors shared by all humans, right? Like, it's not. It's just the matrilineally line of all human. Like, oof. Hey, Kata. Oh, Viclit.
The mutation rate that has been measured from one generation to the next in humans appears to be about 0.5 mutations per generation. Thus, even the most mutated individuals would only require about 200 generations, which is less than 6,000 years, to accumulate this many mutations. This, again, does not at all fit with evolutionary predictions, but does fit very well with the creation model. Now, if you look this up online after you get out of here, you're probably not going to find this information. And the reason for that is because when after scientists realized what happened here with the data, that it's not holding up their paradigm, they went away from the currently observed mutation rate of 0.5 per generation. And now they've just inserted a theoretical.
Yeah, it's basically conspiracy. So he's basically saying, hey, it's conspiracy. Like, he's misrepresented the data, and now he's saying, oh, it's conspiracy. Oh, you're not going to find this in the mainstream thing because once they realized they did it, no. And I'm just looking up his 2012 paper. And that's talking, so this Mitragal paper that he's referring to is just talking about the non-coding hypervariable region of HVR1 of mitochondrial DNA. So it's just talking about one section of it. And as I said, mitochondrial DNA, the non-coding regions, the regions that aren't expressed, mutate at a much higher rate than the coding regions. So, you know, he's kind of cherry-picking one part of one section of one tiny little thing and applying it to everything because that supports himself. Which is, you know, a common theme as we go through. A very common theme. Just get down to... And there's a discrepancy. Yeah, so I'll just show this. until the causes of the discrepancy between mutation rate estimates will be fully understood, right? So they don't even understand why variation in mutation rates happen. A study in similar pedigree-based analysis suggests that at least one HVRI mutation rates at about 0.10. Now, don't forget, that isn't the coding regions of mitochondrial DNA. That's just one highly variable section. At about 0.10 per site per million years should be taken with a grain of salt. Okay, that's not disproving it. It's saying, hey, there's some discrepancies there. We need to study it more. By making rigid assumptions based upon that figure, one radically dismisses the empirical evidence in favor of a faster ticking evolutionary clock. Yeah, but they're not talking about 6,000 years. They're not. They're not. This way, the risk is erroneously located in a remote past relatively recent events, thus distorting our perception of our evolutionary trajectory. Right? Like, so they're basically saying, yeah, evolution still did happen. At present, a prudent choice seems to consider the analysis of both a slow and fast-ticking mitochondrial clock, evaluating the evolutionary consequences of the model under a broad range of assumptions. Yeah, so this is the thing. They're sort of talking about the argument that people are having between 140,000 years to 200,000 years. They're not talking about 6,000, my guy. They're not. Okay, they're just not. But, you know, in order for his book to be true, he's got to say, hey, it's 6,000 years. And this saying, hey, there's some discrepancy among like how fast this mitochondrial clock ticks is going to get him to that. Bad dentist. Bad dentist.
Radical mutation rate from when they think humans diverged from the pre-chimpanzee ancestors. Now, in the mitochondrial DNA, that was tracing the maternal line. But we can also do the same thing, tracing the paternal line through Y chromosomes.
Yay! And which comes out to be way older than mitochondrial Eve. Like, way older. I'll just look up how old, much older it is, because I think it's like over 100,000. Yeah, okay, so Y chromosome Adam lived some 140,000 years before Eve. Okay. Yeah. How does that work?
And this gives us genetic evidence of a literal Adam, the father of us all. All geneticists now agree, again, that we have one paternal ancestor for people on Earth. The only argument is the time frame. And
so the reason why we trace males through the Y chromosome is because the Y chromosome is also one of the chromosomes that doesn't, like, it preserves its structure because you know, it has, you know, there's the Y chromosome. There's no Y chromosome in the woman. There's only an X. So Y chromosome preserves itself as well.
Evolutionists are the one who originally coined the term Y chromosome Adam, just like they coined the term mitochondrial Eve. The Y chromosomes of more than 1,200 men from all over the world, their genomes of the Y chromosome were analyzed. And the original Y chromosome sequence of this paternal ancestor of everyone, which we're calling Y chromosome Adam, which again was invented by the evolutionists, this has been constructed. And the Y chromosomes of most modern men.
Yeah, no, it was invented by the evolutionary biologists. No one's talking about literally your book thing. We've got to stop naming scientific things after anything in the Bible. Because, you know, to us, it's like, oh, well, that'll track really well in the population. You know, people will sort of, you know, it will get a good traction because people will talk about it. You know, but seriously, they're going to use it to say, hey, they agree with us when they 100% don't. That's the problem. That's the problem. And Y chromosome doesn't do recombination either, right? That's the thing. You just get a chromosome from your mother and a chromosome from your father. That's your chromosomes kind of thing, right? Like that's it. You know, so Y chromosome is highly preserved. Yes, it is high mutation, but because it's not like so variable because of recombination, it preserves itself really well. So no, we wouldn't expect to see 100,000 to 200,000 differences. No, we wouldn't expect to see that. No. No. It's not like the rest of the genome.
Are less than 500 mutations removed from Y chromosome atom. This means there's only a 0.002% change in our Y chromosomes. This is way less than evolutionists predicted.
No, it's not. No.
If evolution was true, based on the observed numbers, we would expect to see...
That is true. That is true, actually. Yes, correct. Actually, that is true. Titan brings up a really good point. It is very rare, but sometimes an X and a Y will recombinate. It will have this passing over of passing things. That's 100% true, Titan. But, it's very, very rare, but it can occur. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. So much for their, perfect organism that is so well but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% right, Titan. Thank you for pulling me up on that. But, I mean, it still means that because it's so rare, it's still very, very stable because it's so rare that they transpose themselves. Like, it is still incredibly rare. So yeah, it's very, very stable, even though as far as mutations, like exogenous mutations are common, because it doesn't actually swap, it doesn't recombinate, it's incredibly stable. So no, we wouldn't expect 100,000 to 200,000 mutation. No, we wouldn't.
100,000 to 200,000 mutational differences between modern man and Y chromosome atom, and we only saw 500 mutations. So again, this is very compelling evidence for creation. Now, if you want to know the reason...
It really isn't. It really isn't, because you've just said, hey, it should have this amount, when no one's saying that. So, sorry.
Why there are those who refuse to go along with those scientific findings. Listen to this candid admission from...
Yeah, but they're not scientific findings. They're not scientific findings. You basically saying, hey, this fits with our biblical model, is not scientific findings at all. At all.
Harvard professor Richard Lewontin, who's an evolutionary biologist. Our willingness to accept scientific claims that are against common sense is the key to an understanding of the real struggle between science and the supernatural.
Oh, and welcome to the In Time Independent News, people. Say hello. Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, Google, for telling me what to do and how to live my life. Your cat, Grunge thing, so good to see you. We're doing some light creationist debunking on evolution. I've been talking to theists about evolution recently, and sort of wanted to debunk it, especially because I get to mention Dr. Dan Stern-Cardinal, who did fantastic work in 2004 by debunking a major paper. It was fantastic.
Natural. We take this side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism.
Okay, so I don't know whether this is taken out of context. I don't think that, like, everybody agrees that material world exists, right? Like, everybody agrees that there is a material world, that material world exists. It is the people with religion saying something extra exists, and that's fine. They can believe that. But in order for us to use it in science, they've got to demonstrate it using scientific techniques. Now, science is methodological naturalism. So science started from the idea of looking around the natural world, having observations, asking questions about the world of nature around us, then experimentation and the rest of the process, publishing, falsification, all of that kind of good stuff. That is the process. So you have to start with observations about nature, which is material. I don't think anyone's going to argue that nature is somehow immaterial. It is the material world around us. That's where we start. Now, you can lead that to a god if you want, if you can, but most theists would say, hey, you can't use the material world to investigate God. Okay, then you can't use science to investigate God. It just doesn't work, because science is the investigation of the natural world around us, the material world around us. That's why. Now, that might be his belief that, hey, I'm a materialist and that's a prior commitment. It seems like when we add the non-natural world, the supernatural or the immaterial, the transcendent world to science, it stops working. Like if we add in astrology, ghosts, goblins, all that kind, it doesn't work anymore. It breaks down. It can only investigate the natural world. It's just most theists will agree with that.
It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world,
yes,
but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated.
Yeah, so I'm not so when you're looking at science, you don't look at immaterial causes. You have to be able to test and replicate and do some things like you've got to be able to. So yeah, that's true. Science deals with the material. And most theists would say, yeah, a God is outside of science. Science can't investigate it. Okay. You can believe in a God and still do science. Look at, we were talking genetics earlier. Look at Francis Collins. He was a very devout Christian and worked on the Human Genome Project, did fantastic work. It's just you can't use science to lead you to a God, it seems. Because if you can put any supernatural explanation in there, like I said earlier, even if by some, let's say, miracle, pardon the pun, debunked evolution, it wouldn't lead you to a God. What would rule out magic? What would rule out fairies? What would rule out anything that you could put in there? It doesn't get you, ruling out sort of natural means doesn't get you any closer to an explanation. All it does is open up a can of worms that you can put in anything you want. And if you're putting in your conclusion with nothing to back it up because the other guy's theory is wrong, then you're not doing science. You're not. We don't sort of, debunk somebody's theory and then go, well, because yours is wrong, mine must be right. That's not how science works. You've got to show that it's yours, right? You don't go, Einstein doesn't come out and say, Newton's theory of gravity is wrong, so I'm going to put magic fairies in there. That isn't what happens. He says this is how it actually works. Newton was wrong about gravity. It's not a force. It's the curvature of space-time. That's how it works.
Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. The eminent Kant scholar Louis Beck used to say that anyone who could believe in God could believe in anything. To appeal to an omnipotent deity is to allow that at any moment the regularities of nature may be ruptured, that miracles may happen.
Yeah, so for a start, this is an appeal to authority. Like, he may be speaking for himself and not everybody. That may be the case. I don't know. I don't know the context of this. He may be saying, hey, if we allow, as I said, if we allow anything supernatural in, it was interesting because when evolution sort of went on trial, Kitzviller versus Dover in America, which basically solidified intelligent design as creation science, as basically pseudoscience. It solidified it. It was in a court of law, Christian judge, intelligent design is not science. When it solidified, Michael Behe himself, who is the irreducible complexity guy, he had to admit on the stand in a court that if you allow a God in, there's no reason why you can't allow astrology into science or fairies or magic into science, right? If you start allowing non-material things in, there is no limit to what you allow in, because how do you test that that's correct? And you should be looking, you can't. So he's got a point there. And, you know, the uniformity of nature, and that's what he's talking about, the principle of uniformity of nature, that nature has a deterministic pattern that is always followed. We believe that's a thing. A theist may not. They may believe in miracles. You got 3 ads in a row? I don't even have ads on, I think. Don't I have... Hold it. I'll just check that. Look, if that's happening, something has gone horribly wrong. 3 ads in a row? What? Give me one sec. I'll just share this. Mid-roll ads, manual mode. I'm not on automatic, guys. This isn't me. This isn't me. Hang on. I'm just going to change it to automatic. Okay. Whatever. Let's save that. 100% this is not me. And then manual and save it again. Like, this is not me. Please. Please. I'm begging you. Don't blame me. Please. And I have not clicked the add button. I have not. Yo, Alex, I have no idea, mate. I've got no idea. My standard settings are manual ads, and I usually don't even bother. I got to be honest with you. Ken, so good to see Ken gifted 1 membership level. Thank you so much, Ken. Really appreciate it. And that went out to Daryl Frost. I always do a announcer voice for that, but thank you so much, Ken. I don't do an announcer voice. I know it's cringy, but hey, welcome to the channel. It is cringy all the way down. All the way down. Buckle up, cringe lords.
And miracles are, of course, anathema to many of these scientists.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're not anathema to the scientists, they're just anathema to the scientific method. Oh, okay, Alex. Yeah, no worries, mate. I'm just saying, hey, this is beyond my control.
And of course, mainstream science utterly rejects all miracles as unworthy of consideration. So let's now examine the first several lines.
Well, how do you investigate that using the scientific method? So we've got observation. Okay, you're saying you observed a miracle. Fantastic. You have sort of questioning, like what's causing that miracle. You frame it as a hypothesis. How do you make a hypothesis on the miracle and test that? Like, how does the testing phase go? If God did a miracle, then, you know, if I have this virgin here, she will give birth. Like, how do you make a hypothesis out of that? How do you actually formulate an experiment? You can't. You can't, because the experimentation phase of science relies on the uniformity of nature. And you're saying, hey, nature occasionally just throws a curveball. So how do you actually falsify that miracle? Yeah, exactly. Repeatability. How do you repeat it? I don't understand how you actually introduce a miracle into science in any kind of coherent way that can produce repeatable, testable outcomes. If you come up with a way, that's fantastic. Like if you say, hey, if you pray to this God and say these words, then they will, you know, your bunions will go away, kind of thing. Yeah, we can test that. We can see if it works. But, you know, nobody is saying that. They're basically saying, oh, we'll do this thing, and sometimes, occasionally, very, very occasionally out of the... How do you test that? I don't know. I wish a theist would tell me.
Of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. It sounds like a miracle to me. And in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary. Virgin birth, I'd say that qualifies as a miracle. Suffered under...
Yeah, I mean, there's a debate in that where some biblical scholars say virgin actually means young woman and not actually a virgin. Just saying.
Pontius Pilate was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. On the 3rd day, he rose again from the dead.
Oh yeah, so this is obviously, you know, when I go to a conference on evolution, I will absolutely expect to read Bible verses. Like that's exactly that shows professionalism and an expertise in the subject. Don't forget, this man is a dentist. Okay, like.
The resurrection definitely qualifies as a miracle. He ascended into heaven, a miracle, and is seated at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. From there, he will come to judge the living.
Yeah, but science isn't, hey, a book said it, so it's a miracle, so it happened. That isn't how science works, right? Like, we don't go, well, your book says it happened, and we're just going to assume it's true. We want to be able to test this. That's the whole point of science. Like, it isn't like trying to equate, well, these papers say a thing, so we take it as true, as opposed to my book says a thing, so we take it as true. It's not equivalent. It's not, because we have replication, we have peer review, we have people in...
And the dead. There's another miracle. Clearly, all Catholics reject mainstream science by believing that miracles 2, 3, 4 happen in short order and miraculously, and the miracle number 5 will happen in short order and miraculously.
Yeah, so this is so weird because they're Catholics, but the Pope agrees with mainstream science. Like, the Pope just endorses mainstream science regarding evolution, age of the universe, all of that kind of stuff. And he's saying all true Catholics. Do we know that fallacy? I think we know that fallacy. Yep, it's the no true Scotsman. Big chicken dinner to all those who guessed the fallacy. No true Scotsman. All Catholics reject mainstream science, but there's Catholics that don't reject mainstream science. No, all true Catholics reject mainstream science. So the Pope's not a true Catholic? What am I listening to? Apparently the Pope's not a true Catholic. Who knew? Who knew? Wow, okay, this is wild. I don't understand this one. Wow.
So why is it that so many Catholics go along with
like the Pope? Like the Pope?
Mainstream science by disbelieving that miracle 1 happened in short order and miraculously. So not only do we have very good reason to reject evolution on theological grounds.
I mean, you can reject evolution on theological grounds. That's fine. Just stop pretending you're rejecting it on science and you know, genetics, because all you're doing is misrepresenting things and then saying, hey, it supports our side, even though every conclusion is against you.
But it has been shown that there is sound reason to reject the theory of evolution based on genetics. And so why would we reject the genetic evidence that favors creation?
It doesn't. Not the creation you're... Look, so as far as general creationism, right, like that God created all life, like that kind of very fuzzy, God did something to create life on Earth. Evolution doesn't disprove that. Evolution has nothing to say where life came from, right? Like, it doesn't disprove a God originally doing it. It doesn't disprove that the engineers from the Alien franchise didn't do it, panspermia or, you know, anything like that. It doesn't say where it came from, right? So it doesn't reject a creation. What it rejects is your particular interpretation of the Bible. That's what it rejects. That's what it demonstrates to not be true, right? Like, so it doesn't actually reject any creation. It rejects the young earth creationism that you're trying to purport right now, and the specially created sort of orchard model that you're trying to peddle to the Catholics right now,
which refutes evolutionism and which bolsters what the church has always taught about the reality of a supernatural creation.
Hasn't always taught it. Like I said, Pope embraces evolution and suggests it be taught to all Catholics. Yeah. It's no longer a tenable it really is. Like, just them saying it's not. And this is the thing. If you think that evolution is no longer a tenable theory, what you don't do to change scientific consensus is go on stage to a bunch of people who don't understand the science and do creationist talking points to them which are not accurate and have been debunked a million times. That's not what you do. You produce your own paper. That's what you do.
And so evolution is no longer a tenable theory, if ever it was. One final quote here, but from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female.
Yeah, I think that sexual dimorphism is sort of relatively recent. But I think that's about it from him. I think he just does preaching from now on. Yeah, he just preaches and takes questions, which I usually don't cover those. But yeah, so this is basically a Catholic taking evangelical talking points and somehow, by some, dare I say, miracle, making them worse. Maybe that is a miracle. I don't know. It's pretty bad. But all of his stuff are young Earth creationists' greatest hits. Like their greatest hits. Genetic entropy, not a thing. The never observed evolution, not true. We absolutely have. Micro-macro evolution, not different things, just different timescales. All of this has been explained, all of it has been addressed, and they literally, what they're trying to do is convince the population in order to overthrow the science. That is not how science works. It's not how science works. As Dr. J. Bundy said, these guys know. This man is a PhD. He is a doctor, a PhD expert. Okay, that expertise is in dentistry and not standard biology or evolutionary science, but he is a PhD. He knows how academia works. He knows that what you do to challenge a theory is you produce your own paper with your own conclusions based upon the scientific testing that you have done in order for that to be peer-reviewed by experts in the field. And they don't do it. Instead, they manipulate, they lie, and they try to convince ordinary people of these talking points to try and put pressure on science when all of it's been debunked. It's not right. And we've really got to push back against this kind of, oh, well, if I just convince everybody I'm right, then scientists can go get stuff. No, that's not how anything should work. I don't go and say, hey, stop doing surgery on this lymphoma because I've decided when talking to this guy who's a dentist that it's good for people. This is why we've got these organizations going, oh, we don't need less CO2. We need more of it. It's good. It's what plants crave. Seriously, we have that. That is not the way to challenge science, convincing a whole load of people that, oh, climate change is fake. That is not the way to do it. And these guys, they know that's not the way to do it. They just can't support their assertions. So instead of being real scientists and working diligently, testing and doing experiments and finding data to try and demonstrate and overcome that falsifiability criteria, instead they just try to mob scientists with populism. It's wrong. It's wrong. And I might add, this guy is a dentist. He's not an expert. I'm not an expert on evolution. I'm certainly not. I absolutely am not. But what I'm saying is go read the people who are PhDs in the fucking subject instead of what these young Earth creationists do, which is pull out dentists and geologists and anybody except for people who are experts in the field. Occasionally you'll get the odd one. Stanford is definitely a geneticist, but they are few, far between, have not produced any meaningful work in ages, and have no credibility left in the field because they consistently misrepresent other scientists in the field. Not all scientists are created equal. Anyway, I'll call it there, but that was actually that was actually interesting. It was good to be able to keep my knowledge up because I do debates on a lot of different subjects. I do all kinds of subjects. So be able to, look into evolution again, get refreshed. Really good, fantastic. We didn't even get to endogenous retroviruses, and that's my favorite topic for evolution. That to me is a smoking gun for evolution. And again, dodgy Donny Deals, if you are out there, offer of debate is still on. I'll still debate you, Donny, on endogenous retroviruses. I'm happy to. I would be ecstatic. if Donnie would debate me on it. But, you know, please don't go pester him. I don't want people to do anything just, I would be happy to, because I think that the conclusions that are made from that is, hey, it has to be true because it has to be true. Like, there's no reason to think that endogenous retroviruses were created by a god. I mean, what is that? Anyway, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming. I've have an absolute blast on this one. I always love a Fundamentalist Fails on my Friday. Your day may differ. But, you know, it's always fun. I always find it fun. Anyway, what have we got coming up? We've got a debate coming up on Sunday. I do want to do a Mehdi Hassan debate. I think Ember should be okay with that. Hopefully, Ember, if you're in the chat, give a thumbs up, thumbs down, a board symbol. Give me some love. Just something. Just show me some emotion there, and I will get on that toot sweet. I still have to watch. that Gutsick Gibbon teaching evolution to. Isn't that guy she's teaching? Isn't that the anti-flat Earth guy, the final experiment guy? Isn't that the final experiment? Will Duffy? Is it Will Duffy? Is he the final experiment guy? I can't remember. Anyway, Gutsick Gibbon recently had explaining it to him, and I haven't seen it yet. Don't spoil it for me, okay? Reverend Duffy, gotcha. I really have to see it, so I'll probably head off to see that. Or although I'm very tired, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But that's okay. I will watch it. I promise. Maybe I'll do something on it. Maybe that's worth a go. You know, I mean, Erica's always fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Erica. I think I would fanboy out if ever I saw her. Like, seriously, if I saw her, I'd be like, ooh, it's Gutsick Gibbon. Then you'll see like a 6-foot guy acting like a small child. You know, like. Hey, I look, geek and proud, okay? You came for the cringe. Cringe lords unite. That's what you're going to get from this channel. If you don't like it, that's fine. Stay and laugh, I don't care. But do take care. As I always say, be kind to yourself. Don't just believe something because someone's got a stage and a mic, including me. I can be wrong about stuff, sure. I've never claimed to be an expert. What I do is I listen to the consensus scientific views in the field as much as I can. And where there is disagreement, I will acknowledge there's disagreement there. But one thing that's not disagreed on in the field is that evolution is a thing. There's vast disagreement about all kinds of things, you know, like how fast it happens, how much horizontal gene transfer is involved, how much endosymbiosis is involved. There's tons of disagreements, but the fundamentals aren't really being disagreed on at all. So be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.